I'm Morgan Bailey, 33 years old, and I never expected to stand frozen before 60 relatives as my father publicly declared I was no longer his daughter. Not because I'd committed a crime or hurt someone, but because I'd chosen my own path. The shock on his face minutes later when his boss recognized me was something I'll never forget. The irony was perfect, being rejected for my career choices only to be revealed as his new boss. Before I tell you how I went from family outcast to watching my father's jaw drop, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you want more stories about finding success against all odds. Growing up as Robert Bailey's daughter meant living under a microscope of expectations. From my earliest memories, my father was a man of unbending principles and traditional values. He worked in middle management at Reynolds Enterprise, a position he'd held for 25 years with minimal advancement but unwavering loyalty. Every dinner conversation revolved around the importance of stability, following established paths, and the sacred Bailey family tradition. Business school followed by joining the family insurance agency his grandfather had founded. The Bailey name means something in this town, he would remind us, fork pointed emphatically across the dinner table. For generations of steady, respectable business. No flashy startups, no risky ventures, just solid, dependable service. My mother, Catherine, was a study in quiet resignation. When my father's criticisms became too harsh, she would find me later, usually in my bedroom where I'd retreated to nurse my wounded pride. "Your father means well," she would say, smoothing my hair. "He just wants security for you." His father was tough on him too. These moments of tenderness were always private, never contradicting Robert directly. In family meetings, her votes aligned with his, her opinions echoed his sentiments. Yet sometimes, when we were alone, she would slip me articles about women entrepreneurs or books about forging new paths. "Just to broaden your horizons," she'd say with a small smile that hinted at dreams she herself had set aside. My brother Ethan embraced our father's vision completely. 3 years older than me, he followed every step of the Bailey planned perfectly business school at our father's alma mater, summer internships at the family agency, joining as junior partner upon graduation. His adherence earned him the position of golden child, his achievements celebrated while mine were scrutinized for flaws. See how Ethan closed the Henderson account. My father would beam at Sunday dinners. That's the Bailey touch, understanding what people really need, not what some computer algorithm says they want. My sister Amanda, 2 years younger than me, found her own form of rebellion. She dyed her hair purple in high school, dated musicians our father disapproved of, but ultimately stayed close to home, working as a teacher in our same town. Her rebellions were cosmetic, surface-level statements that never truly threatened the family structure. As for me, I excelled academically from an early age. My straight A's were expected, not celebrated. When I brought home perfect report cards, my father would nod briskly and ask, "What about next semester?" When I won the state business competition in 9th grade, his first comment wasn't congratulations, but "Judge Williams had some valid points about your risk assessment section." My early entrepreneurial ventures were dismissed as playing store. At 12, I developed a neighborhood pet sitting service with scheduled walks, feeding charts, and progress reports that expanded to cover 3 neighborhoods by the time I was 14. My father called it a cute little hobby, even as I saved enough to buy my first laptop without asking for family money. The pivotal moment came during my junior year of high school. I developed a business plan for a digital platform that would modernize insurance claims processing, ironically, something that could have revolutionized our family business. My plan won national recognition, with venture capitalists expressing interest in development funding after I graduated college. I brought the trophy and certificate home, excited to show how I could blend the Bailey tradition with modern innovation. Instead of pride, my father's face clouded with disapproval. "This tech nonsense is a bubble waiting to burst," he said, barely glancing at my achievement. "Real business is done face-to-face, not through screens and algorithms." That night, we had our first major argument about my future. Stanford has one of the best computer science programs in the country, I insisted, clutching the admissions packet I'd received that morning. And their business innovation track is exactly what I want to study. Bailey Insurance needs marketing graduates and actuaries, not coders, my father countered, his voice rising. Your great-grandfather built something that has supported this family for generations. You want to throw that away for some Silicon Valley fantasy? I'm not throwing anything away, I argued. I'm building something new, something that could take the Bailey name into the future. The future, he scoffed, turning away. The Bailey name stands for reliability, not chasing trends. I went to bed that night realizing that my vision for my future and my father's were irreconcilable. Something would have to give, and I was determined it wouldn't be my dreams. The summer before college became a cold war in the Bailey household. My choice of Stanford over my father's alma mater, Penn State, was treated as a preliminary betrayal. The selection of computer science and business innovation as my majors rather than traditional business administration deepened the rift. Each choice I made that diverged from the established Bailey path was met with increasing chill from my father. My mother tried to play peacemaker. Stanford is an excellent school, Robert, she ventured during one particularly tense dinner. Morgan's scholarships show they really value her talents. Plenty of good local schools would have valued her too, he replied without looking up from his plate. Schools where she could focus on practical business skills instead of California dreaming. That summer, I interned at a tech startup in Philadelphia instead of at Bailey Insurance. While Ethan spent his days learning the family client roster and playing golf with longtime customers, I immersed myself in coding, digital marketing, and venture capital presentations. I came home excited about new possibilities, only to face my father's dismissive comments. Another day playing with computers, he would ask as I entered the house, making it clear that in his eyes, my work wasn't real business experience. The final confrontation came 3 days before I was scheduled to leave for California. My father called a family meeting, a formal affair held in the living room with everyone present. He sat in his leather armchair, the position of authority from which all Bailey decisions were announced. Morgan, he began with a formality that sent warning signals through me. I've given this considerable thought. Your college choices. Unorthodox, but the Bailey family has always valued education. What happens after graduation is my concern. He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. I'm prepared to support your studies at Stanford under one condition. Upon graduation, you return to Pennsylvania and join the family business. For years is plenty of time to get this tech fascination out of your system. The room fell silent. My mother studied her hands. Ethan wore a satisfied smirk. Amanda looked between us with wide eyes. That's not going to happen, I said finally, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'm not coming back to sell insurance policies using methods that haven't changed since the 1980s. Then you're choosing your path over your family, he stated, rising from his chair to indicate the discussion was closed. Don't expect Bailey resources to support choices that undermine Bailey traditions. Our last dinner before I left was a masterclass in frigid civility. As I prepared to leave the next morning, my father shook my hand formally at the door. When this California adventure fails, and it wouldn't expect to walk back into a position here. Opportunities go to those who demonstrate loyalty. Those were the last words my father spoke directly to me for nearly a decade. My early years in Silicon Valley were challenging. I lived in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, worked part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load, and spent every spare minute building skills and connections. My first startup attempt after graduation, a peer-to-peer rental insurance platform, failed after 18 months, teaching me painful but valuable lessons about scaling, investor relations, and market timing. Through it all, communication with my family dwindled to occasional formalities. Holiday calls became increasingly brief and strained. My mother would call secretly sometimes, her voice hushed even though my father was at work. "I just want to know you're eating properly," she would say, though we both knew she wanted to hear about my life, but feared showing too much interest. She never mentioned my career directly, as though doing so would be taking sides against my father. Ethan's rare communications were dismissive. "Still playing with your apps out there?" he messaged one Christmas. "Dad, just made me senior partner. Real work with real people, you should try it sometime." Amanda provided occasional family updates, births, marriages, illnesses with cautious neutrality. "Not taking sides," she would text. "Just keeping you in the loop." 10 years passed this way as I gradually built my reputation in the tech industry. After my first startup failure, I joined an established fintech company, rising through positions of increasing responsibility. I developed expertise in modernizing traditional financial services through technology, ironically becoming an expert in exactly what our family business had needed. The unexpected breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon. A headhunter contacted me about an executive position at a major corporation looking for someone with my exact experience profile. The interviews progressed rapidly, each round moving me closer to the C-suite position. It was during the final interview that I discovered a stunning coincidence. The company was Reynolds Enterprise, the same firm where my father had worked his entire career. The moral dilemma hit immediately. Should I withdraw to avoid the awkwardness? Would it seem like I was deliberately seeking this position to prove something? After careful consideration, I decided to proceed. My qualifications had earned me this opportunity, not family connections. If anything, my family situation would make the position more challenging, not less. When the offer came for the CEO position, I accepted based on the merits of the role and my qualifications, not because of or in spite of me father's connection to the company. The cream-colored envelope arrived at my San Francisco apartment on a foggy March morning. The elegant script addressed to Ms. Morgan Bailey contained an invitation to my grandmother Eleanor's 80th birthday celebration, a full family reunion at the Old Bailey property in rural Pennsylvania. I stood in my kitchen, coffee growing cold, staring at the card. 10 years had passed since I'd seen most of my family in person. 10 years of building a life and career completely separate from the Bailey legacy. In 2 weeks, I would be publicly announced as the new CEO of Reynolds Enterprise, but the announcement hadn't been made yet. The timing was either cosmic irony or perfect dramatic staging. "You're not seriously considering going, are you?" asked my best friend Jasmine when I called her that evening. "These are the same people who basically cut you off for having ambition." "My grandmother always supported me," I replied, tracing the embossed border of the invitation. "She sent me birthday cards every year, even when everyone else stopped. And she's turning 80. So send a nice gift and a card," Jasmine countered. "You don't need to walk into the lion's den." "Maybe I need to face them," I said slowly, surprising myself with the realization. Not to prove anything, but to close that chapter properly. I've spent 10 years building something I'm proud of. Maybe it's time to stand in front of them as the person I've become, not the daughter who disappointed them. After considerable thought, I RSVP'd affirmatively, deciding to drive out for the Saturday celebration and return Sunday a brief appearance to honor my grandmother without extending my exposure to family tension. Preparing for the reunion consumed more mental energy than my CEO transition planning. I deliberated over my outfit, finally selecting a simple navy blue dress that projected professionalism without seeming flashy or superior. I practiced responses to the inevitable questions about my personal life. No, not married. No, no children. Yes, very fulfilled in my career. I rehearsed calm reactions to potential barbs about abandoning family traditions or California values. Most importantly, I decided not to reveal my new position until the company made its official announcement the following week. This wasn't about dramatic reveals or proving points. It was about respecting my grandmother on her special day. The drive to Pennsylvania took me through increasingly familiar landscapes. As city gave way to suburbs and then to rolling countryside, memories flooded back: summer picnics, school field trips, the gradual narrowing of horizons that had once felt so suffocating. The Bailey property appeared around a bend in the road, 20 acres centered around the Victorian farmhouse my great-great-grandfather had built after founding the insurance agency. Cars lined the long gravel driveway, and colorful balloons marked the entrance. I parked my rental car at the far end, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the warm spring afternoon. My first encounters with extended family members produced a range of reactions. Cousin Patrick's wife, Jennifer, did a double take before offering a tentative smile. "Morgan? Is that really you? We weren't sure you'd come." Uncle Jim pumped my hand enthusiastically. "The California girl returns. How's the weather out there in La La Land?" His jovial tone didn't quite reach his eyes, which assessed my clothes, my car, my demeanor with calculation. Aunt Susan cornered me by the punch bowl, diamond rings flashing as she patted my arm. "Still single, I hear? Well, career women often find love later. Though you're what now, 33? Tick-tock." She laughed as though she'd said something helpful rather than insulting. Cousins I'd grown up with now had spouses and children in tow. Some seemed genuinely interested in my life, while others made comments thinly veiling competitiveness. Must be nice to only worry about yourself, and some of us chose family over ambition, floated my way between superficial smiles. I was studying the elaborate birthday cake when my sister Amanda appeared at my elbow. "You came," she said, surprise and something like relief in her voice. She'd changed little in the past decade, same heart-shaped face, though her once purple hair was now a natural brown styled in a practical bob. "For Grandma," I confirmed, accepting her hesitant hug. "How are you, Mandy?" "Good. Teaching 3rd grade now. Married Brian 4 years ago. You got the wedding invitation, right?" She glanced around nervously. "Look, Morgan, Dad's in a mood today. He didn't know you were coming until he saw your name on Grandma's guest list update. Just be prepared, okay?" Before I could ask what she meant, a familiar voice called out, "Amanda, your son is climbing the maple tree again." My mother hurried toward us, stopping short when she saw me. "Morgan," she said softly, years of unspoken words passing between us. She looked older, more lined around the eyes, her blonde hair now streaked with silver. "You're here." "Hi, Mom," I replied, accepting her tentative embrace. Her perfume was the same lilacs and vanilla, instantly transporting me back to childhood. "You look well," she offered, eyes scanning my face. "Successful." "I am," I confirmed, not elaborating. "It's good to see you." The awkward moment stretched until she patted my arm and murmured, I should help with the grandchildren, before hurrying away. I glimpsed my brother Ethan across the lawn, pretending not to notice me while pointing me out to his wife. My father was notably absent from the gathering front yard, though Amanda informed me he was inside, helping Grandma Eleanor prepare for her entrance. As guests began moving, I found a seat at a table near the back of the tent, positioned for a quick exit if needed. As family members filled in around me, I maintained pleasant small talk while watching the entrance for my first glimpse of my father in a decade. The tent buzzed with conversation as my extended family settled into their seats. Circular tables draped in white linen filled the space, each centered with spring flower arrangements and framed photos of my grandmother at various life stages. At the front, a long rectangular table awaited the immediate family: grandparents, parents, siblings, and their spouses. I remained at my back table, exchanging pleasantries with distant cousins who seemed unsure how to treat me. From this vantage point, I watched my father enter the tent. Robert Bailey at 63 looked much as he had at 53, tall and straight-backed, his dark hair now fully gray but still thick, his movements deliberate and controlled. He scanned the room as he walked, his gaze passing over me without pause, whether intentionally or because he didn't recognize me, I couldn't tell. My brother Ethan followed, now sporting the confident swagger of a man who believed he'd fulfilled his destiny. He guided his wife Tracy and their 2 young sons to the family table, occasionally nodding acknowledgement to guests. Unlike my father, he made no pretense of not seeing May's gaze fixed directly on me for a moment, his expression a mixture of surprise and something like resentment before he deliberately turned away. Grandmother Eleanor made her entrance on my grandfather Thomas's arm, her silver hair elegantly styled, her smile radiant as everyone rose to applaud. At 80, she remained the family matriarch, the gentle but firm center around which the Bailey clan revolved. Even my father softened visibly in her presence. After everyone was seated and the first course served, my grandfather stood to toast his wife of 58 years. His warm words about partnership, resilience, and family legacy brought tears to many eyes. Grandmother Eleanor's response was brief but heartfelt, thanking everyone for gathering and expressing her joy at seeing all my beloved family together again. Her gaze found me across the room, her smile widening slightly in acknowledgement. As dessert was being served, my father unexpectedly rose from his seat, tapping his water glass for attention. The tent gradually quieted as everyone turned toward him. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate my mother's extraordinary life and contribution to our family, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the space. As Eleanor's oldest son, I've had the privilege of witnessing her dedication to family values and traditions longer than anyone here except my father. He spoke at length about family loyalty, the Bailey legacy, and the importance of honoring one's roots. The speech seemed benign if somewhat pointed, and I began to relax slightly, thinking perhaps Amanda had overstated his mood. Then his tone shifted. Family isn't just about shared blood or names, he continued, his voice hardening slightly. It's about shared values and commitment to each other above personal gain or individual whims. My stomach tightened as I sensed where this was heading. Most of you know that the Bailey family has maintained certain traditions for generations. We build rather than abandon. We support rather than undermine. We stay rather than stray. The tent had grown uncomfortably quiet. The clink of silverware ceased entirely. His gaze fixed directly on me for the first time, and the weight of 60 pairs of eyes followed, turning toward my table. 10 years ago, my daughter Morgan chose to abandon our family business, our traditions, and our values for the allure of Silicon Valley. She made it abundantly clear that her personal ambitions meant more to her than 4 generations of Bailey history. Murmurs rippled through the tent. My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral, my posture straight. I had hoped that time and maturity might bring perspective, he continued, but her presence here today after a decade of absence feels less like reconciliation and more like curiosity or perhaps tourism to a world she deliberately left behind. My grandmother's face had gone pale, her hand gripping my grandfather's arm. My mother stared fixedly at her plate. Ethan wore an expression of grim satisfaction, while Amanda looked stricken. So let me be clear, since actions apparently weren't clear enough, my father's voice rose slightly. As of today, I no longer consider her my daughter. The Bailey family business and legacy will continue through those who've proven their loyalty and commitment. He raised his glass toward Ethan. To family, real family, and to values that stand the test of time rather than chasing the next trend. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved to drink to his toast. My grandmother's hand had risen to cover her mouth. Several aunts exchanged alarmed glances. Even Ethan looked somewhat discomfited by the public nature of the declaration. In that frozen moment, I felt a strange sense of clarity washing over me. The hurt was there deep and undeniable, but alongside it came an unexpected sense of release. For 10 years, I'd carried the weight of being the family disappointment, the cautionary tale, the one who'd strayed. Now, with his public disowning, my father had inadvertently set me free from any lingering obligation or guilt. My first instinct was to stand up, walk out with dignity, and never look back. The rental car keys felt heavy in my pocket, the exit tantalizingly close. This wasn't my world anymore, perhaps it never truly had been. But as I looked at my grandmother's distressed face, something shifted inside me. I hadn't come here to win my father's approval or to rejoin the Bailey fold. I'd come to honor my grandmother and to stand in my truth. Walking out now would only reinforce the narrative my father had constructed that I was a deserter, someone who abandoned family when things got difficult. With deliberate movements, I pushed back my chair and stood. The scrape of wood against floor echoed in the silence. Shoulders back, chin lifted, I began walking not toward the exit, but toward the front of the tent. Every step toward the front of the tent felt both eternal and inevitable. Faces turned to follow my progress, some sympathetic, others uncomfortable, a few openly curious about how this family drama would play out. I kept my gaze steady, focused on the path ahead rather than the reactions around me. As I reached the small clearing near the family table, my father's expression hardened into something between defiance and dismissal. He remained standing, clearly unwilling to cede the physical advantage of height in this confrontation. I didn't come here to disrupt Grandma Eleanor's celebration. I began, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I came because family does matter to me, though perhaps we define it differently. I turned slightly to address the broader gathering rather than just my father. For the record, I never rejected the Bailey values of integrity, service, and hard work. I simply believed those values could thrive in new environments and adapt to changing times. My father's scoff was audible, but I built my career on the foundation of what I learned growing up in this family. The determination, the attention to detail, the commitment to excellence, those are Bailey traits I carry proudly, even if I apply them differently than previous generations. I was about to continue when movement at the tent entrance caught my attention. A tall, distinguished man with silver hair and an expensive suit paused at the threshold, seeming to assess whether he was interrupting a private moment. William Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Enterprise, me future predecessor, and my father's boss for the past 25 years. Seeing me, his face broke into a warm smile as he strode forward, hand extended. "Morgan, what a delightful surprise," he exclaimed, seemingly oblivious to the tension permeating the tent. "When you mentioned a family commitment this weekend, I had no idea I'd be attending the same gathering." Confused murmurs rippled through the audience. My father's expression shifted from righteous indignation to bewilderment. "William," I greeted him with a professional smile, accepting his handshake. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Your grandmother and my wife serve on the hospital board together," he explained cheerfully. "Eleanor has been trying to get me to one of her legendary gatherings for years. Finally made it." He glanced around, noting the strange atmosphere. "Have I interrupted something important?" "Just a family discussion," I replied diplomatically. William nodded, then turned to address the gathering. "Well, while I have everyone's attention, I might steal a moment of your celebration to share some news that I'm sure Robert already knows, but perhaps the rest of you don't." My father's confusion deepened visibly. Clearly, he had no idea what William was about to say. "Reynolds Enterprise has been searching for the right person to lead our company into the next generation," William continued. "After an exhaustive national search, I'm delighted that we found the perfect candidate with exactly the combination of traditional financial services knowledge and innovative technology expertise we need." I closed my eyes briefly, knowing what was coming and powerless to stop it. "I'm looking at our next CEO," William announced proudly, gesturing toward me. "Morgan will be taking the reins next month when I step into retirement. The official announcement goes out Monday, but I couldn't resist sharing the news when I saw her here." The tent erupted in gasps and whispers. My father's face drained of color, his expression transitioning from anger to disbelief in real time. My mother's hand covered her mouth in surprise. Ethan looked as though someone had physically struck him. "Morgan Bailey," William continued, oblivious to the bombshell he dropped, "represents everything we've been looking for: ethical leadership, strategic vision, and a remarkable track record of modernizing traditional business models while maintaining their core values." He turned to my father with a friendly clap on the shoulder. "You must be incredibly proud, Robert." All those years you've dedicated to Reynolds, and now your daughter will be leading the company. Quite the family legacy. The irony was so perfect it almost seemed scripted. My father stood frozen, visibly processing that the daughter he'd just publicly disowned would soon be his boss. William, finally sensing the awkward atmosphere, looked between us with dawning comprehension. I'm sorry, did you not know? I assumed since it's your daughter. But of course, the board proceedings were confidential until the official announcement. Actually, I interjected gently, I've been using Baileychin professionally, which might explain the confusion. This was true. I'd added my maternal grandmother's maiden name years ago to create some separation between my professional achievements and my family name. Oh, he continued innocently, especially her reputation for ethical leadership and family-centered corporate culture. The board was particularly impressed by her insistence that companies should operate with the same integrity and long-term perspective that strong families do. Each word seemed to land like a physical blow to my father's careful narrative about my rejection of family values. Around the tent, relatives exchanged meaningful glances, reassessing the family black sheep in light of this unexpected revelation. I should probably let you get back to your celebration, William said, finally reading the room accurately. Morgan, we can catch up at the office on Monday. Robert, always good to see you. We should have lunch next week to discuss the transition. With a warm smile for my grandmother, he added, Happy birthday, Eleanor. Judith sends her regards, before making a tactful exit. In his wake, the tent remained uncomfortably silent. My father, still standing, looked physically diminished. His earlier righteousness collapsed into confusion and what looked remarkably like fear. Without another word, he turned and walked stiffly from the tent. Family members immediately broke into hushed conversations, heads bent together, occasional glances thrown my way. I stood alone in the clearing, the unexpected revelation hanging in the air around me. From the head table, my grandmother slowly rose and made her way toward me, her eyes bright with a mixture of concern and what looked like pride. Morgan, she said softly, taking my hands in hers. It seems we have much to catch up on. As my father's retreating figure disappeared beyond the tent flap, the gathering erupted into a buzz of whispered conversations and not-so-subtle stares in my direction. The once unified Bailey clan fractured visibly into groups, those moving to console my mother, those gravitating toward Ethan and his visible discomfort, those approaching me with suddenly warm smiles, and those huddled in corners, discussing the dramatic turn of events. William Reynolds lingered near the dessert table, slowly becoming aware of the family dynamics he had inadvertently disrupted. He caught my eye across the space and mouthed what looked like sorry with a questioning tilt of his head. I excused myself from my grandmother's gentle grip and walked toward him, professional mask firmly in place despite the emotional tumult beneath. William, I greeted him quietly. I appreciate your kind words, but perhaps we should discuss the timing of announcements another time. His eyes reflected genuine concern. Morgan, I had no idea about the situation with your father. Had I known there was family tension, I never would have. It's fine, I interrupted gently. The announcement was scheduled for Monday regardless. This just accelerated certain conversations. He studied me with newfound respect. Your composure is remarkable. If you manage crises at Reynolds with this same steadiness, I've clearly made the right choice. I appreciate that, I replied. But today is about my grandmother's birthday, not business transitions. Perhaps we could continue this conversation in the office. Of course, he agreed immediately. I'll see myself out and leave you to your family matters. Again, my apologies for the awkward timing. No apology necessary, I assured him. These were conversations that needed to happen eventually. As William departed, I turned. Aunt Susan materialized. Uncle Frank, who had earlier made dismissive comments about city living, now wanted to discuss urban real estate investments. Cousins who had pointedly mentioned their family priorities suddenly found my career choices fascinating. I answered politely but briefly, excusing myself as soon as possible from each conversation. This sudden interest in my life felt less like genuine connection and more like opportunism, realization that saddened me more than my father's rejection had. My grandmother, sit with me, Morgan, she requested. This old woman has missed too many years of your life. As I joined her, she took my hand in hers, her skin paper-thin, but her grip surprisingly strong. I always knew you would make your own path, she said quietly. You have his determination, you know your father's. But you have my mother's vision. She was ahead of her time, too. I never meant to disappoint him, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could censor them. Disappointment is about expectations, not achievements, she replied wisely. Your father expected you to want what he wanted. That's not disappointment, that's a failure of imagination. She squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. Not because of your title, but because you stayed true to yourself even when it was difficult. Our moment was interrupted by my brother Ethan, who approached with barely contained anger simmering beneath his controlled exterior. So that was your plan all along, he said without preamble, voice low but intense. Engineer this whole CEO position to humiliate Dad in front of the entire family. Ethan, Grandmother Eleanor warned, but I gently touched her arm. It's okay, I assured her before meeting my brother's accusing gaze. The timing was coincidental, Ethan. I had no idea William would be here or that he would announce anything. Convenient coincidence, he scoffed. 10 years of barely a word, then you show up right before becoming Dad's boss? You expect me to believe that? I expect nothing from you, I replied evenly. I came to celebrate Grandma's birthday, nothing more. The Reynolds board made their decision based on qualifications, not family connections I deliberately minimized by using Bailey Chin professionally. Ethan's jaw worked as he processed this. You could have declined the position once you realized it was Dad's company. Would you have? I challenged gently. If you were offered the perfect role that matched your skills and ambitions, would you turn it down because a distant relative worked there? He's not a distant relative, he's our father. A father who just publicly disowned me before I had any idea about William's presence or announcement, I reminded him. How exactly does that make me the villain in this scenario? Something in Ethan's expression faltered a crack in his certainty. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the little brother who had once built pillow forts with me before our father's expectations had turned us into competitors rather than allies. The agency was supposed to be all of ours, he said finally, a note of genuine hurt beneath his anger. That was the plan, the three of us running it together someday. You were the smart one, the one with the best ideas. Your leaving changed everything. The honesty of this admission caught me off guard. In all our limited communications over the years, Ethan had never once suggested he missed my presence or valued my contributions. I didn't know you felt that way, I said carefully. You seem to thrive being Dad's chosen successor. Being the only option isn't the same as being chosen, he replied, then straightened his shoulders, mask slipping back into place. Doesn't matter now anyway. Enjoy your big corporate office. Some of us still believe in what our family built. He turned and walked away, posture rigid with unresolved emotion. Watching him go, I felt a complex mixture of regret for what might have been and acceptance of what was. Before I could process this encounter, I'm so sorry, she blurted, dropping into the chair beside me. I should have stood up for you. All these years, I should have said something when Dad would dismiss your achievements or when Ethan would make those snide comments. I didn't want to rock the boat. Amanda, I began, but she rushed on. No, let me say this. I was a coward. I stayed in the safe middle ground, never challenging Dad directly but never really supporting you either. And you've done amazing things, Morgan. Things that make our little insurance agency look like a corner lemonade stand compared to what you're doing. I couldn't help but smile at her characteristic exaggeration. The agency has value, Amanda. Different doesn't mean better or worse. Don't be diplomatic, she sniffled. You're going to be a CEO of a major corporation. I teach third graders to multiply and still live 20 minutes from where we grew up. And you're amazing at it, I countered. Your students are lucky to have you. Success isn't measured by titles or geography. She wiped her eyes, studying me. When did you get so wise? Actually, don't answer that. You were always the wise one. She reached for my hand. Can we start over? Not completely, I know we can't erase 10 years, but maybe we could text more than twice a year? Maybe I could come visit you in California sometime. I'd like that, I said sincerely, squeezing her hand. Very much. Our reconnection was interrupted by my mother, who approached hesitantly, her eyes red-rimmed, but her composure intact. Your father is... I'm sure he is, I replied neutrally. He might appreciate a conversation, she suggested. Away from everyone. I considered declining, pointing out that he had been the one to sever our relationship publicly. But looking at my mother's hopeful expression, I realized this wasn't about giving my father what he deserved, it was about giving myself closure. All right, I agreed, rising from my seat. I'll talk to him. As I moved toward the tent exit, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I was approaching this conversation as Morgan Bailey Chin, successful in my own right, not as Robert Bailey's disappointing daughter seeking approval. The difference was subtle but profound, and it carried me forward with steady steps toward the confrontation that had been brewing for a decade. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wraparound porch of the old Victorian farmhouse. My father sat alone on the wooden swing that had hung from the same hooks for 3 generations, staring out at the rolling Pennsylvania countryside. From a distance, he looked smaller somehow, diminished from the towering figure of my childhood memories. He didn't look up as my footsteps sounded on the wooden planks, though the slight stiffening of his shoulders indicated he was aware of my presence. I settled into the wicker chair adjacent to the swing, neither too close nor too distant for conversation. For several minutes, we sat in silence. The distant laughter and conversation from the tent floated across the lawn, a reminder of the celebration continuing without us. You could have told me, he finally said, his voice lacking its usual authoritative edge. About the CEO position? I only accepted it last week. The board required confidentiality until the formal announcement. You could have mentioned you were interviewing at Reynolds. I considered this. Would it have mattered? Would it have changed your opinion of my career choices? He didn't answer directly. 10 years at a company I've dedicated my life to, and they bring in my estranged daughter to lead it. His laugh held no humor. Someone up there has an interesting sense of irony. I was hired because my experience bridges traditional financial services and technological innovation, I explained evenly. Not because of or in spite of any connection to you. He turned to look at me fully for the first time, his expression a complicated mixture of pride, resentment, and something that might have been regret. You look like your mother, he observed, but that determination, that's pure Bailey. Some traits transcend disagreements, I acknowledged. Another silence stretched between us, less tense than the first, but heavy with unspoken words. I built something secure for you, for all of you, he said finally. A business with roots, with community connection, with stability. Silicon Valley startups implode every day. I wanted to protect you from that uncertainty. I understand that now, I replied truthfully. But protection can become limitation when it doesn't allow for growth or change. The agency has grown, he countered defensively. Within parameters you controlled, I pointed out. That works for some people. I worked for Ethan. But I needed different challenges, different measures of success. And now you'll be my boss, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. I'll be the CEO of a company where you're a valued middle manager, I corrected gently. Those are different things. He studied me with new consideration. You've changed. Grown up. 10 years tends to do that, I replied without sarcasm. Your mother missed you, he said abruptly. She kept a file of articles about you, printouts from tech magazines, business journals. Anything that mentioned your name or your company's. This revelation caught me off guard. She never said. She thought it would upset me, he admitted. Maybe she was right. The implications of this that my mother had followed my career in secret, that my father knew about it and had allowed it shifted something in my understanding of the past decade. What happens now? He asked, the question hanging between us. Professionally? Nothing changes immediately. You'll continue in your current role. I'll be working primarily with the executive team to implement the strategic vision the board approved. And personally, I considered this carefully. That depends on what we both want. I'm not the daughter who left 10 years ago, and you're not the father I left behind. We're different people now. I said things today that I can't take back, he acknowledged, eyes returning to the distant landscape. You did, I agreed. And they hurt. But they also clarified things. We can't go back to some idealized family relationship that never really existed. But maybe we can build something new, something based on mutual respect rather than expectations and obligation. Respect, he repeated, testing the word. Not love. Love is complicated, I said carefully. It got tangled up with approval and disappointment in our family. Maybe respect is a clearer foundation to start with. He nodded slowly. I can understand that. Respect is earned on both sides. Yes, I agreed. And it has boundaries. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not, and I won't have to pretend I approve of every decision you make, he countered, a hint of his old stubbornness returning. No, I smiled slightly. Just respect that they're my decisions to make. He extended his hand formally, the gesture so characteristic that it almost made me laugh. I can work with that, professionally and otherwise. I accepted the handshake, noting the familiar calluses and strength in his grip. Not a dramatic reconciliation, not a tearful embrace, but perhaps something more sustainable for who we were now. Your grandmother wants a proper family photo before people start leaving, he said, rising from the swing. We should head back. Walking beside him toward the tent, I felt a curious lightness. Nothing had been fully resolved. Years of hurt and misunderstanding couldn't be erased in one conversation, but something had shifted, creating space for possibility where before there had been only certainty and judgment. In the weeks that followed, that tentative beginning unfolded in small, measured steps. My office at Reynolds Enterprise became a neutral territory where my father and I could interact without the weight of family history. Our first official meeting was awkward but productive, focused on the concrete realities of business rather than the complicated emotions between us. My mother called more frequently, no longer in whispered conversations but open discussions about her life, my work, the weather, normal mother-daughter topics that slowly rebuilt our connection. She visited me in San Francisco 3 months after the reunion, her first trip to see my life there. Watching her explore my neighborhood, meet my friends, and gradually relax into the unfamiliar environment helped heal something in both of us. Amanda and I established a regular Sunday video call that became a highlight of my week. Her perspective is so different from mine, yet delivered with increasing honesty, offered insights into family dynamics I'd missed during my years away. Her son Jaden, now 7, began joining our calls, curious about his cool auntie in California. Ethan remained the most distant, our interactions limited to necessary family communications. But even there, the open hostility had been replaced by a civil, if cool, acknowledgement of our connection. Perhaps that was all we could manage for now, and perhaps that was enough. Sitting in my office 6 months after the reunion, looking out at the San Francisco skyline as evening settled over the city, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The hurt of being rejected, the determination to prove myself, the unexpected intersection of my past and future at my grandmother's birthday, all of it had shaped me in ways I was only beginning to understand. My success hadn't come from rejecting family values, but from translating them into a different context. The work ethic, integrity, and perseverance my father had insisted upon had served me well, even as I applied them to pursuits he hadn't envisioned or approved. The journey of healing with my family wasn't complete, perhaps it never would be entirely. But I had learned that defining success on my own terms didn't have to mean complete separation from my roots. It was possible to honor where I came from while staying true to my own vision, to maintain boundaries while still allowing for connection. As the lights of the city began to sparkle against the darkening sky, I felt a profound sense of peace with my path. Not because everyone now approved or understood, but because I no longer needed that approval to recognize the value of my choices. Sometimes the greatest freedom comes not from having everyone accept your decisions, but from accepting them yourself so completely that others' opinions, while still mattering on a human level, no longer define your sense of worth or purpose. That was the real achievement, far more significant than any title or position. I invite you to share in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? How did you navigate that difficult path? Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. There's power in knowing we're not alone in these complex family journeys. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to stay true to yourself while keeping your heart open to reconciliation when it's healthy and possible. My name is Eleanor, 37 years old, and every December I would watch dread build in my daughter Haley's eyes as Christmas approached. Not because she disliked presents, but because visiting my wealthy in-laws meant another year of painful inequality. 11 years we spent as outsiders in that cold mansion, watching my sweet girl perfect her brave face while her cousins received everything. I never imagined a simple white envelope would finally shatter the charade and change our lives forever. Before I share a story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever stood up for someone you love against all odds. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin where most families lived modest but happy lives. My parents owned a local bookstore that barely kept us afloat, but our home overflowed with love and laughter. I managed to earn a scholarship to Northwestern University, determined to become the first college graduate in my family. That was where I met Robert during my sophomore year. Robert came from old Connecticut money, his family name attached to a prestigious investment firm that had served wealthy clients for generations. With his polished appearance and quiet confidence, he seemed to belong to a different world entirely. We met in a literature class where, surprisingly, we were the only two students who defended an unpopular interpretation of Hemingway. Something sparked between us that day, and against all odds, we began dating. Our backgrounds could not have been more different. My idea of a fancy dinner was Olive Garden on birthdays. His family belonged to country clubs where a single meal cost more than my monthly rent. Yet Robert never made me feel less than. He listened to my dreams with genuine interest and shared stories about the pressure of family expectations. When he proposed after graduation, I was terrified about joining his world, but certain about my love for him. Then came the inevitable meeting with his family at their sprawling Connecticut estate. Margaret Walsh, my mother-in-law, greeted me with a perfectly practiced smile that never reached her eyes. She was tall, immaculately dressed, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and the posture of someone who had never allowed herself to slouch a single day in her life. "So lovely to finally meet the girl who has captivated our Robert," she said, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, lingering just a moment too long on my department store dress. Harold, my father-in-law, seemed kinder but distant. He shook my hand firmly, offered a genuine smile, then retreated to his study for most of my first visit. I would later learn this was his standard response to any potential conflict. Harold had long ago decided that maintaining peace with Margaret required strategic absences. Then there was Robert's sister Stephanie and her husband Brandon. Stephanie was essentially a younger version of Margaret, with the same carefully calculated warmth and scrutinizing gaze. Brandon was a former college athlete turned successful corporate lawyer who seemed perpetually concerned with appearances and connections. They had two children who Margaret frequently described as perfect specimens when she thought I couldn't hear. Abigail, their daughter, was tall, poised, and accomplished at everything from horseback riding to playing violin. Jackson, their son, was athletic and charming, already being groomed to follow in the family business tradition. They were pleasant enough children, but even at young ages, They seemed to understand their elevated status in the family hierarchy. Robert and I married despite Margaret's thinly veiled disapproval. We settled in a comfortable home about 40 minutes from his parents. When I became pregnant a year later, Margaret's response was measured enthusiasm. "Let us hope for a strong, healthy boy to carry on the Walsh tradition," she said, patting my stomach as if placing an order. Instead, we welcomed Haley into our lives. She was beautiful, with Robert's thoughtful blue eyes and my auburn hair. When she was 18 months old, we noticed she wasn't reaching certain milestones. After numerous doctor visits, we received a diagnosis of mild cerebral palsy. The condition primarily affected her left side, giving her a distinctive walking gait and occasional fine motor challenges. Robert was my rock during this period. "She is perfect exactly as she is," he would say, watching Haley determinedly figure out her own way to climb onto the sofa or hold a crayon. He adapted toys to make them easier for her to manipulate and spent hours researching the best therapies. Margaret, however, visibly withdrew when told about Haley's diagnosis. "These things sometimes happen," she said with a sigh that carried unmistakable disappointment. "Perhaps the next one will be completely healthy." I remember feeling my spine stiffen at her words, while Robert firmly replied there was nothing wrong with Haley that needed fixing. Despite these early warning signs, we maintained regular visits with the family. Robert believed his mother would eventually see Haley's wonderful qualities. When Haley turned 5, we decided it was time for her to experience her first Christmas at the Walsh family mansion. She was thrilled about meeting her cousins, who were 7 and 9 at the time. Haley spent weeks creating handmade Christmas cards for everyone, painstakingly drawing little family portraits with her improving fine motor skills. She practiced Christmas carols and even asked me to teach her proper tea manners because Grandma Margaret seems fancy, Mommy. The Christmas gathering itself was like something from a magazine spread. The 20-foot tree in the main hall sparkled with antique ornaments. Every mantel and doorway dripped with professional quality decorations. Staff circulated with trays of appetizers while holiday music played softly from hidden speakers. Haley approached it all with wide-eyed wonder, clutching her handmade gifts. When gift time arrived, Margaret made a show of distributing presents. Abigail received an expensive American Girl doll collection with custom furniture. Jackson got the latest gaming system with a dozen games. Other cousins and family members received similarly lavish gifts. Then came Haley's turn. Margaret handed her a small package containing a generic picture book about puppies, the kind you might pick up as an afterthought at a grocery store checkout line. "Thank you, Grandma," Haley said earnestly, immediately opening the book and showing genuine appreciation. I caught Robert's eye across the room. His jaw tightened momentarily before he forced a smile. Later that night, when I mentioned the disparity, he sighed. "Mom just needs time to adjust to Haley. She will come around." I wanted to believe him, but something in my gut told me this was just the beginning of a pattern. Unfortunately, my instincts proved correct. By the time Haley turned 7, the pattern of exclusion had become impossible to ignore. That Christmas, Abigail and Jackson received expensive electronics, while Haley unwrapped a set of generic art supplies from the discount store. The price difference was obvious, but more painful was the thought behind the gifts. Margaret knew nothing about Haley's interests or talents and clearly hadn't tried to learn. Despite the inequality, Haley continued creating thoughtful homemade gifts for her grandparents. That year, she spent weeks crafting a beautiful watercolor painting of the family mansion. Her art therapist had helped her develop techniques to work around her motor challenges, and the result was genuinely impressive for a child her age. When Haley proudly presented the framed painting to Margaret, my mother-in-law glanced at it briefly. "How creative," she said, setting it aside without another glance. Later, I noticed the painting had disappeared, while Abigail's rudimentary clay handprint from preschool held a place of honor on Margaret's desk. "Your grandmother just has different taste in art," I explained to Haley in the car ride home, fighting back tears at her crestfallen expression. "It is okay, Mommy. I will make something better next year," she replied, her resilience breaking my heart. When Haley turned 9, Margaret accidentally, left her out of the annual family Christmas card. The glossy photo featured Stephanie's family prominently, with various cousins arranged artfully around Margaret and Harold. Haley was nowhere to be seen, though Robert and I appeared in a small photo at the bottom corner. "I cannot believe this was intentional," Robert said when I showed him, though his voice lacked conviction. I called Margaret directly, something I rarely did. "I noticed Haley was missing from the family Christmas card," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, dear, was she? I suppose we used the photos from the summer gathering. Haley was having one of her difficult days then, remember? She could not participate in the formal shoot because she was tired from walking around the grounds." Margaret's voice dripped with false concern. "She was resting for 20 minutes. There were plenty of opportunities to include her," I replied. "Eleanor, you have always been so sensitive. Not everything is a conspiracy against your daughter. Sometimes things simply happen," Margaret said dismissively. When I relayed this conversation to Robert, he finally began to acknowledge the problem. "I will speak with her before Christmas," he promised. But when the holiday arrived, he seemed to lose his nerve in the face of his mother's imperious presence. By the time Haley was 11, the exclusion had expanded beyond Margaret to include extended family members who seemed to take their cues from her. Cousins forgot to include Haley in their games. Aunts and uncles gave extravagant gifts to other children while handing Haley gift cards with minimal value. Haley, sensitive and perceptive, developed coping mechanisms to protect herself from the obvious rejection. "I do not really like those games anyway," she would say with a carefully rehearsed shrug when excluded from activities. "I am happy just watching." The most heartbreaking moment came when I overheard a conversation between Haley and Margaret that neither knew I could hear. I had gone looking for Haley during a family gathering and paused outside the library when I heard their voices. "Grandmother, do you think my painting could go in the art show at your country club? My art teacher said it was good enough for galleries," Haley was saying, her voice hopeful. "Darling, the club has certain standards. They showcase real artists, not just children's scribbles," Margaret replied. "Besides, we would not want to put you through that kind of scrutiny. People can be unkind about people who are different. Abigail's violin performance is more suitable for public appreciation. She is what people expect from a Walsh, you understand. The perfect one." I froze, waiting for Haley's response, my heart pounding. "I understand, grandmother," Haley said quietly. "Thank you for protecting me." That night, I found Haley in her room practicing walking without her slight limp, tears streaming down her face as she forced her reluctant muscles to move in patterns that caused her pain. "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" I asked, rushing to her side. "I am practicing walking like Abigail," she said between determined breaths. "If I can walk normal, maybe grandmother will put my painting in the show." I gathered her in my arms, my own tears falling into her hair. "Your walk is perfect because it is yours. Your art is beautiful. You do not need to change a single thing about yourself." When I told Robert about this incident, something finally shifted in him. The conflict between loyalty to his parents and protecting his daughter had been building for years, but this seemed to clarify things for him. "This cannot continue," he said firmly. "We need to rethink these Christmas gatherings." Yet somehow, through a combination of guilt, tradition, and Robert's lingering hope for reconciliation, we found ourselves continuing the pattern for several more years. Each Christmas became more painful than the last, with the disparities growing more obvious and Haley's practiced indifference becoming more convincing. When cleaning Haley's room before her 15th Christmas with the Walsh family, I discovered a journal hidden beneath her mattress. I would never normally invade her privacy, but it had fallen open to a page that caught my eye. "Reasons why Grandmother Margaret does not love me. 1. I walk funny. 2. I cannot play sports like Jackson. 3. I like art instead of music like Abigail. 4. I am not a real Walsh. 5. I am broken." That list, written in my daughter's careful handwriting, broke something in me. I showed it to Robert that night, watching as he read each item with growing horror. After last Christmas, when 15-year-old Haley received a $10 bookstore gift card while her cousins unwrapped laptops and designer clothes, I found her crying silently in the guest bathroom of the mansion. She quickly wiped away her tears when she saw me, plastering on that familiar fake smile. "Just something in my eye, Mom," she said with forced cheerfulness. The new cologne Uncle Brandon got must be irritating them. It was in that moment, watching my beautiful, kind, talented daughter pretend she was not being systematically rejected by people who should love her unconditionally, that I knew something had to change. As December approached this year, with Haley now 16, I reached my breaking point. We were sitting at our kitchen table reviewing the annual invitation to the Walsh family Christmas extravaganza when I finally spoke my truth. "I cannot do this anymore, Robert," I said firmly. "I will not subject Haley to another year of this treatment. We are not going." Robert did not immediately respond. He stared at the embossed invitation card, tracing its gold lettering with his finger. "Eleanor," he said finally, "I need you to trust me on this. This will be the last time we do this, I promise." "That is what you said last year," I reminded him. "And the year before." "This time is different," he insisted, an unfamiliar resolve in his voice. "I have been working on something." I had noticed Robert staying up late in his home office over the past few months, mysterious phone calls he would take in private, documents quickly minimized when I entered the room. At first, I had feared the worst, but his demeanor had been determined rather than guilty. "What exactly have you been working on?" I asked. "Please, just trust me. After this Christmas, everything will change," he promised. Before I could press further, Haley entered the kitchen. She immediately spotted the invitation, and her shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly before she forced them to relax. "So, another Christmas at grandmother's house?" she asked with practiced nonchalance. "Honey, we do not have to go this year if you do not want to," I offered. Haley shrugged. "It is fine, Mom. Really. I kind of like seeing the mansion all decorated. Besides, Jackson mentioned they got a new pool table, and he said he would teach me to play." The hopeful note in her voice made my heart ache. Even after years of disappointment, she still looked for connections with her family. "If you are sure," I said hesitantly. "Totally sure," she replied with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Besides, I made grandmother a really cool sculpture this year. My art teacher thinks it is the best thing I have ever created." As December 24th arrived, we packed our overnight bags for the annual stay at the Walsh mansion. Haley carefully wrapped her sculpture, a striking abstract piece that somehow captured the essence of the family estate through fragmented perspectives. It truly was exceptional, showcasing her growing artistic talent. Robert seemed unusually calm as we drove the familiar route to Connecticut. Typically, these trips made him tense, caught between his wife's justified anger and his mother's disapproval. Today, however, he almost seemed serene. "You will see," he said cryptically when I questioned his mood. "Everything will make sense soon." The Walsh mansion looked like something from a holiday movie set. Professional lighting illuminated the historic facade, while enormous wreaths adorned every window. Inside, the decoration theme this year was Winter Wonderland, with white and silver dominating every room. Staff in formal attire circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Margaret greeted us in the grand foyer, elegant as always in a designer dress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. "Robert, Eleanor," she nodded coolly before turning to Haley with her practiced smile. "And Haley, my goodness, you have grown since last year." Haley stepped forward carefully, balancing her wrapped sculpture. "Merry Christmas, grandmother. I brought you something I made." "How thoughtful," Margaret replied without reaching for the gift. "Wilson will take that to the gift room for now." She gestured toward a staff member who promptly relieved Haley of her creation. Dinner that evening was a tense affair, at least for me. 20 family members seated around an enormous table laden with gourmet food and fine china. Stephanie dominated the conversation with stories of Abigail's college acceptance letters. Princeton was very persistent, but we feel Yale might be the better legacy choice, she announced to appreciative murmurs. The tennis coach there has practically guaranteed her a spot on the team. And Jackson has been offered early recruitment for lacrosse at 3 Ivy League schools, Brandon added proudly. the Walsh athletic genes showing through. I felt Haley stiffen beside me. Though she never complained, I knew she was aware that her physical limitations meant such athletic achievements would never be hers. Haley received recognition in the National Young Artist competition. I offered during a brief pause in the self-congratulation. Her piece was selected for the traveling exhibition. How nice, Margaret said dismissively before immediately turning to Harold. Darling, tell everyone about the new yacht club membership. Harold, who had been mostly silent throughout dinner, looked uncomfortable but obliged his wife by launching into details about exclusive amenities that no one really cared about. After dinner came the tradition I had grown to dread most, the elaborate gift-giving ceremony in the main parlor. The ritual always followed the same pattern. Margaret would direct the distribution of presents from beneath the towering Christmas tree, each gift meticulously wrapped by professional staff rather than family members. Abigail went first this year, unwrapping a small jewelry box that contained car keys. She squealed appropriately as Brandon explained the new luxury convertible waiting in the garage. Jackson received the latest gaming console not yet available to the general public, along with a custom gaming chair and professional-grade headset. He high-fived his father while Margaret beamed approvingly. Various cousins unwrapped designer clothes, electronics, and exclusive experiences. Even Robert received an expensive watch that he accepted with a polite thank you. I received a generic gift basket of bath products, the same one I suspected Margaret's assistant purchased for any female acquaintance on their secondary gift list. Then came the moment I had been dreading. All presents had been distributed, and Haley sat empty-handed, her practiced smile firmly in place. Margaret cleared her throat delicately. Haley, dear, it seems your main gift is on backorder. Supply chain issues, you understand. It should arrive sometime in January. It was the same excuse she had used last year, except the backordered gift had never materialized. That is perfectly okay, grandmother, Haley replied smoothly. The holidays are about family, not presents. I gripped the armrest of my chair so hard my knuckles turned white. The practiced grace with which my daughter handled this deliberate exclusion made me simultaneously proud and furious. I glanced at Robert, expecting to see the usual conflict on his face. Instead, he looked oddly composed. As the family began to chat about their gifts, Robert slowly stood up, commanding attention simply by his unusual action of interrupting the carefully choreographed event. Actually, he said in a clear, steady voice, I have one more gift to present tonight. The room quieted as Robert reached inside his jacket pocket. The crisp white envelope in Robert's hand seemed to glow under the crystal chandelier lights. It was a simple thing, rectangular and unadorned, yet something about the deliberate way he held it caused conversation to fade into silence. What is this about, Robert? Margaret asked, her voice carrying a note of irritation at the disruption to her carefully planned evening. Robert did not immediately answer her. Instead, he moved to stand beside Haley and me, a physical statement of allegiance that was not lost on anyone in the room. For 11 years, he began, his voice steady and clear, I have watched a pattern unfold in this family. A pattern I tried to deny, then excuse, then rationalize away. Margaret's expression shifted from irritation to wariness. Robert, this is hardly the time for whatever this is. We're celebrating Christmas as a family. Are we? Robert asked, the simple question hanging in the air. Because from where I stand, only certain members of this family are truly included in the celebration. I felt Haley tense beside me, her hand finding mine and squeezing tightly. This was uncharted territory for us all, Robert openly challenging the family dynamic. I have documented 11 years of inequality, Robert continued, tapping the envelope. 11 years of watching my daughter receive token gifts while her cousins are showered with extravagance. 11 years of seeing her beautiful artwork ignored while Abigail's average violin playing receives standing ovations. 11 years of watching her practice her fake smile in the mirror before these gatherings so no one would know how much the exclusion hurts her. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Robert, you are being dramatic. No one has intentionally excluded Haley. Haven't they? Robert replied calmly. Last Christmas, Abigail and Jackson received gifts totaling over $20,000 each. Haley received a $10 gift card to a bookstore that closed 3 months earlier. The year before, professional photographers were hired for the family portrait, yet somehow every configuration excluded Haley except for one group shot where she was placed at the far edge, easily cropped out. Shall I continue with examples? The room had grown so quiet you could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Margaret's face had transformed from wariness to a cold mask, while Harold stared intently at his hands. "I've been planning this moment for months," Robert continued, his voice gaining strength. "At first, I thought I just needed to have a serious conversation with you, Mother. Then I realized the problem runs much deeper than that." He opened the envelope and removed several papers. "This is the deed to a new house in Colorado, where Haley has been accepted to the Boulder Arts Academy, one of the finest art schools in the country." He placed one document on the coffee table. A small gasp escaped Margaret's lips, but Robert wasn't finished. "This," he said, producing another document, "is my resignation letter from Walsh Investment Group, effective January 1st. I have accepted a position with a firm in Denver that values work-life balance and family wellness." "You cannot be serious," Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Leaving the family business? Moving across the country? All because of some perceived slight toward Haley?" "Perceived?" I could not hold back any longer. "There is nothing perceived about it, Margaret. It has been deliberate and consistent exclusion from day one." "This is betrayal," Margaret hissed, her composure cracking. "After everything we have done for you, Robert. The connections, the education, the opportunities." "What you call betrayal, I call protecting my daughter," Robert replied evenly. "This will be our last Christmas with this family, at least until there are significant changes in how you treat Haley." Margaret's face hardened as the full reality of what was happening dawned on her. This wasn't just a momentary disagreement. Her son was fundamentally altering the family structure she had controlled for decades. Harold finally looked up, and to my surprise, he gave Robert a small, almost imperceptible nod of understanding. Stephanie attempted to salvage the situation. "Robert, Haley has always been so sensitive. Perhaps she has misinterpreted ordinary family dynamics as rejection. We all love her, of course." "Do you?" Robert challenged. "When was the last time you asked about her art? Or invited her to join Abigail for an activity? When was the last time you remembered her birthday without Eleanor reminding you?" Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unable to meet Robert's gaze. The cousins looked confused, with Abigail showing the first signs of genuine discomfort as the reality of the situation became clear. "I have evidence of the pattern," Robert continued, pulling out a small notebook. "Gift disparities documented with photographs and receipts. Social exclusions noted with dates and specific incidents. Mother, you once told Haley her art was adequate for someone with her limitations when she proudly showed you a painting that had won a regional competition." Margaret flushed. "I never said such a thing." "You did." Haley spoke up for the first time, her voice small but steady. "It was my watercolor of the mountain lake. You said it right before you put it in the drawer of your desk instead of on the wall with Abigail's recital photos." Robert then reached into his pocket once more and pulled out a small gift box wrapped in simple blue paper. He knelt in front of Haley. "This Christmas marks a new beginning for us," he said gently. "No more pretending. No more accepting less than you deserve." With trembling hands, Haley accepted the small box. The room remained utterly silent as she carefully unwrapped it, lifting the lid to reveal what was inside. Chaos erupted in the Walsh family parlor as the significance of Robert's announcement registered with everyone present. Margaret pressed a hand to her chest dramatically. "I think I need my medication," she announced, her voice wavering. "All this stress is affecting my heart condition." It was a tactic I had seen her employ before when conversations turned in directions she couldn't control. Harold, however, surprised everyone by finally finding his voice. "Enough, Margaret," he said quietly but firmly. "The theatrics won't help now." Margaret looked at her husband with shock and used to any form of contradiction from him. Before she could respond, Stephanie jumped in with an attempted damage control. Robert, Eleanor, she began, her voice dripping with insincere concern. If there have been misunderstandings about Haley's place in the family, we deeply apologize. Perhaps we could discuss this privately instead of ruining Christmas for everyone. This isn't about ruining Christmas, I replied, finding my voice. This is about 11 years of watching my daughter be systematically excluded and devalued by people who should love her unconditionally. Family isn't supposed to make you constantly prove your worth. Family doesn't rank children based on their abilities or appearances. Meanwhile, Haley was staring at the contents of the small box Robert had given her. Inside were a set of keys and what appeared to be an official letter. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the paper. "What is it, honey?" I asked gently. "It is an acceptance letter to the pre-college program at the Boulder Arts Academy," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "And keys to my own art studio?" She looked up at Robert questioningly. Robert nodded, smiling at her. "The house in Colorado has a separate guest house that has been converted into an art studio for you. Professional-grade equipment, north-facing windows for natural light, everything your art teachers recommended." Tears filled Haley's eyes, but for once, they weren't tears of hidden pain. "You did this for me?" "We should have done it years ago," Robert said, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. Margaret had recovered enough to attempt regaining control of the situation. "This is ridiculous. You're uprooting your entire life over imagined slights. Robert, you're clearly not thinking clearly. The Walsh family has a legacy here in Connecticut. Your position in the firm, your connections, your future all depend on maintaining those relationships." "No, Mother," Robert said firmly. "Those things depend on making the right choices for my family. My real family," he added, putting his arm around Haley and me. "I think what Margaret is trying to say," Harold interjected, his voice gentler than his wife's, "is that perhaps this decision seems drastic. Surely there's a way to address these concerns without such extreme measures." "That might have been possible years ago," I replied. "But we're well beyond that point now." Margaret's expression hardened further. "So, you're just going to throw away generations of family tradition because your daughter feels left out sometimes?" "Children often feel excluded, Eleanor. It's part of growing up. Haley needs to learn that the world won't coddle her because of her condition." The room fell silent at Margaret's words. The euphemisms finally dropped to reveal the ugly truth beneath. Even Stephanie looked shocked at her mother's bluntness. "And there it is," Robert said quietly. "The real issue all along. You've never accepted Haley because of her cerebral palsy." Margaret flushed, but didn't deny it. Instead, she attempted another approach. "Robert, I've always wanted what's best for this family, including Haley. But you have to understand, there are certain expectations, certain standards that the Walsh name carries. And you think Haley doesn't meet those standards?" Robert challenged. "I think," Margaret said carefully, "that we all want children who reflect well on the family name, who carry forward the strengths and accomplishments we value. Is it so wrong to focus more attention on those who excel in traditional ways?" "Yes," I said firmly. "When it means systematically making a child feel worthless, it is absolutely wrong." The heated argument continued, with Margaret attempting various tactics to regain control. First came denial, then accusations that we were oversensitive, followed by attempts to reframe her actions as tough love. When those failed, she finally resorted to an unexpected admission. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "Perhaps I have struggled to connect with Haley. Do you know how difficult it is to see you, Robert, devote so much attention to her? The way you light up when she shows you her artwork? The way you adapted your entire life to accommodate her needs? You never showed that kind of dedication to the family business, to the legacy your father and I built. Are you saying you're jealous of my relationship with my daughter?" Robert asked incredulously. Margaret didn't answer directly. "The Walsh family has standards, expectations. When you married Eleanor, I accepted it despite her background. When Haley was born with her condition, I tried to make the best of it. But you chose to make her the center of your world instead of focusing on what really matters for the future of this family." The raw honesty of her jealousy hung in the air, uncomfortable and revealing. While this confrontation unfolded, Harold quietly approached Haley. To everyone's surprise, he pulled a small package from his pocket. "I've had this for months, looking for the right time," he said softly, placing it in Haley's hands. "I should have been braver sooner." Haley unwrapped it to find a beautiful artist's sketchbook bound in leather with her name embossed on the cover. Inside the front cover was a note. "To my talented granddaughter. Your art brings beauty to a world that needs it. Love, Grandpa Harold." "You've seen my artwork?" Haley asked, surprised. Harold nodded. "I've followed your progress online through your school's gallery page. That landscape series you did last spring was extraordinary." This quiet exchange did not go unnoticed by others in the room. The cousins, who had been silent observers until now, began to show varying reactions. Jackson, 17 now and more mature than his mother, approached Haley awkwardly. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I didn't realize. I never thought about how all this must have felt for you." Abigail remained defensive, standing beside her mother. "It's not our fault if Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Robert chose to see everything as a slight against Haley." "Abigail," Brandon finally spoke up, surprising everyone. "That's enough." He turned to us with uncomfortable sincerity. "I've never felt right about many things that happened at these gatherings, but I never spoke up. That's on me." The family gathering had completely fractured now, with people taking sides or attempting to process the sudden upheaval of their comfortable assumptions. I caught Haley's eye across the room and motioned toward the door. "I think we should pack our things," I said quietly. "We can stay at a hotel tonight." Haley nodded, clutching her grandfather's gift and the keys to her future studio. As we moved toward the staircase to collect our belongings, Robert faced his mother one last time. "This isn't how I wanted this evening to go," he said. "But maybe it's exactly how it needed to go. The truth needed to come out." "You'll regret this," Margaret warned. "When the excitement of playing hero fades, you'll miss everything you're throwing away." "No," Robert said with certainty. "The only thing I'll regret is that I didn't do this years ago." We packed quickly, the sounds of continued argument drifting up from downstairs. As we carried our bags to the car, the grand mansion that had intimidated me for so many years suddenly seemed smaller, its perfect decorations hollow and meaningless. As we drove away, Haley looked back at the twinkling Christmas lights growing smaller in the distance. "Are we really moving to Colorado?" she asked, her voice a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Yes," Robert and I answered in unison, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were truly united as a family. The car ride home from the Walsh mansion was filled with a strange mixture of emotions. Relief, uncertainty, sadness, and hope all swirled together as we processed the evening's events. Haley sat quietly in the back seat, occasionally touching the keys to her future art studio as if to confirm they were real. "Did I cause all this trouble?" she finally asked in a small voice. "I never meant to come between Dad and his family." Robert immediately pulled the car over to the shoulder of the road and turned to face our daughter. "Haley, listen to me," he said firmly. "You did not cause any of this. The problems in my family existed long before you were born. Their inability to appreciate you for the amazing person you are is their failure, not yours. Tonight wasn't just about how they treated you, though that was the catalyst. It was about choosing what kind of family we want to be." "Your father's right," I added. "This confrontation was long overdue. We should have taken a stand years ago." Haley nodded slowly, processing our words. "So we're really moving to Colorado?" "We really are," Robert confirmed. "I've been working on the details for months. The house is already purchased. My new position starts February 1st, and the Boulder Arts Academy is expecting you for the spring semester." When we arrived home, the simple Christmas decorations in our modest house seemed more genuinely festive than all the designer grandeur we had left behind. Robert pulled up images of our new home on his laptop, giving us a virtual tour of the mountain property just outside Boulder. "It sits on 3 acres, he explained, showing us exterior views of a beautiful craftsman-style home with mountain views. The main house is 4 bedrooms, and this separate guest house has been converted into an art studio. The studio was everything an artist could dream of, with vaulted ceilings, abundant natural light, built-in storage for supplies, and professional-grade equipment. Haley's eyes widened as Robert scrolled through the images. "This is really mine," she whispered. "All yours," Robert confirmed. The previous owner was a landscape artist who designed the space specifically for painting and sculpture work. There's even a small gallery area where you can display your pieces. "But what about your job, Dad? The family business?" Haley asked, still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the changes. Robert's expression turned serious. "The truth is, I've been unhappy at Walsh Investment for years. The new position with Aspen Financial Group offers not just better work-life balance, but more innovative approaches to investment. I'll be helping manage their arts endowment fund, actually something I've always been interested in." "And your mother? Will she ever forgive you?" Haley asked. Robert sighed. "That's up to her. I've left the door open for reconciliation, but only if she can truly accept you and treat you with the love and respect you deserve." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. We began packing our belongings, deciding what to take to our new life and what to leave behind. Each item we sorted became symbolic somehow, representing either the past we were leaving or the future we were embracing. 3 days after Christmas, we received an unexpected visitor. Harold stood on our doorstep, alone, and looking somewhat lost without Margaret orchestrating his movements. "May I come in?" he asked hesitantly. Robert nodded, leading his father into our living room where half-packed boxes created a maze of our transitional state. "Margaret doesn't know I'm here," Harold said once seated. "She's still processing everything that happened." "You mean she's still angry?" Robert translated. Harold nodded. "Yes, that too. But I couldn't let you leave without saying some things that need to be said." He turned to Haley, who had entered the room cautiously. "Particularly to you, Haley." Haley sat down across from her grandfather, her expression guarded after years of disappointment. "I have failed you as a grandfather," Harold said simply. "I watched Margaret's treatment of you and said nothing. I noticed the disparities in gifts, in attention, in basic human kindness, and I remained silent. My silence made me complicit." "Why?" Haley asked, the single word carrying the weight of years of rejection. Harold considered the question seriously. "Fear, primarily. Fear of disrupting a marriage that has always operated on Margaret having complete control. Fear of confrontation. Perhaps also a lifetime of having others make my important decisions." He looked directly at Haley. "None of those are adequate excuses. They're simply the truth." From a large envelope, Harold withdrew several photo albums and memory boxes. "These belong to you," he said, placing them on the coffee table. "Family history Margaret has kept from you. Photos of Robert as a child, family heirlooms that should have been shared, mementos of events you were excluded from." As Haley carefully opened the first album, Harold continued speaking to Robert and me. "I've set up a trust for Haley's education and artistic development. Margaret doesn't know about it yet. It's not meant to buy forgiveness, but to begin making things right." "Dad," Robert began, clearly conflicted. "Please," Harold interrupted. "Let me do this one thing correctly. Too little. Too late perhaps, but sincere nonetheless." Before leaving, Harold embraced Haley for what might have been the first time. "I hope to visit you in Colorado, if that would be welcome." "I'd like that," Haley replied softly. The remainder of December brought difficult conversations about boundaries with Margaret and Stephanie. Robert spent an emotional hour on the phone with his mother, making it clear that while he was open to rebuilding their relationship, it would only happen with genuine change on her part. "I love you, Mother," he said finally. "But I love my daughter more than your approval." Margaret's response was cold silence, followed by a formal email from the family attorney regarding Robert's shares in the family business. Christmas Day itself was spent in our own home, just the three of us creating new traditions that celebrated Haley's uniqueness rather than trying to force her into a mold she was never meant to fit. We cooked together, played board games, and set up a small makeshift art space in the garage where Haley began working on pieces for her new studio. Neighbors and friends, hearing of our upcoming move, stopped by with well wishes and small gifts. Haley's art teacher brought specialized supplies for the high-altitude conditions of Colorado, along with introductions to artist colleagues in Boulder. On New Year's Eve, the three of us stood in our backyard watching distant fireworks illuminate the sky. Robert raised a glass of champagne, while Haley and I held sparkling cider. To new beginnings, he toasted. To a year of authenticity, of living by our own standards rather than someone else's. To standing up for what matters, I added. To finding where we truly belong, Haley finished, a genuine smile lighting up her face for the first time in longer than I could remember. 1 year later, our Colorado home was transformed from a new house into a true sanctuary. The mountains visible from our windows had witnessed our family's rebirth, a process both painful and beautiful. Haley, now 17, had flourished in ways we could hardly have imagined back in Connecticut. The Boulder Arts Academy had embraced her talent immediately. Her distinctive artistic style, once dismissed by Margaret as adequate for someone with her limitations, was recognized as genuinely innovative by instructors who saw past physical differences to the creative soul beneath. "Your daughter has extraordinary spatial perception," her new mentor had told us after her first semester. The way she translates three-dimensional concepts to two-dimensional space shows remarkable sophistication. Haley's confidence grew steadily as she received genuine feedback rather than condescension disguised as concern. Her walking gait, once a source of self-consciousness, became simply another aspect of herself she no longer felt compelled to hide. When a younger student with similar mobility challenges joined the academy, Haley volunteered to mentor her, breaking the cycle of shame that had once been imposed upon her. The true culmination of her transformation came in November, when the Boulder Community Gallery hosted Perspectives, Haley's first solo exhibition. The collection featured 12 pieces exploring family dynamics through fragmented architectural elements. The centerpiece, titled Mansion Reconstructed, reimagined the Walsh family estate deconstructed and reassembled in a more organic, inclusive form. The opening night drew art lovers from across the region, including several gallery owners from Denver. Haley, dressed in a vibrant blue dress that complemented her auburn hair, moved through the crowd with newfound poise, discussing her techniques and inspirations with genuine confidence. "I never dreamed this would be possible," she whispered to me during a quiet moment. "Having people see my work, really see it, not just pretend to look while thinking about my legs." Robert had found his own renaissance in Colorado. His position at Aspen Financial Group allowed him to combine financial expertise with his long-suppressed interest in arts patronage. The work energized rather than drained him, and for the first time in his career, he returned home each evening with stories to share rather than stress to suppress. Harold had kept his promise to visit, making quarterly trips to Colorado without Margaret. His relationship with Haley blossomed slowly but steadily as he showed genuine interest in her artistic development. He attended her gallery opening, visibly moved by the work and the confident young woman his granddaughter had become. "Margaret should see this," he said quietly as we stood before Mansion Reconstructed. "Is she ready to?" I asked. Harold sighed. "No, not yet. But perhaps someday." Margaret remained entrenched in her position, refusing any compromise that might acknowledge her role in the family fracture. She had redecorated the mansion, removing all photos of Robert, Haley, and me. According to Harold, she referred to Colorado as Robert's midlife crisis and predicted we would come crawling back once we came to our senses. Stephanie initially maintained solidarity with her mother, but cracks in that alliance began appearing by summer. The catalyst came unexpectedly through Jackson, who contacted Haley via social media after seeing her artwork featured in a regional arts magazine. "Your painting was incredible," he wrote. "I always knew you were talented, but this is next level. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you more." This initial reconnection led to regular video chats between the cousins. Jackson, preparing for college himself, seemed to be questioning many of the values he had been raised with. His relationship with Haley developed into something neither had experienced before, genuine cousin friendship based on mutual respect rather than obligatory family connection. Abigail took longer to come around. Her identity had been so thoroughly built on being the perfect grandchild that Haley's success threatened foundations she hadn't realized were unstable. In September, however, a handwritten letter arrived from New Haven where Abigail had begun her freshman year at Yale. "College is making me question everything," she wrote. "For the first time, I'm meeting people who don't care about family names or traditions. They value authenticity over perfection. It's making me see our family differently, especially how grandmother treated you. I'm sorry I was part of that system. Your art is amazing, and I was wrong." My own journey of healing took different forms. For years, I had subordinated my feelings to maintain peace with the Walsh family. The freedom to express genuine emotions without calculating their impact on Margaret's approval was both exhilarating and terrifying. I began working with a therapist to process the accumulated stress of a decade trying to protect my daughter while navigating toxic family dynamics. "You've been carrying armor that's become too heavy," my therapist observed. "Learning to set it down doesn't mean you're vulnerable. It means you're finally free." That freedom manifested in unexpected ways. I returned to my long-abandoned interest in environmental education, volunteering at a local nature center, and eventually securing a part-time position developing programs for children with disabilities. Creating accessible nature experiences for kids who might otherwise be excluded brought a fulfillment I hadn't anticipated. Our new Christmas traditions evolved organically to reflect our values rather than inherited expectations. Instead of formal dinners with expensive gifts, we focused on experiences and creative expression. Haley designed our holiday cards featuring Colorado landscapes. We volunteered at community meals before enjoying our own simple celebration. Gifts were thoughtful rather than extravagant, often handmade or experiential. Harold joined us for these celebrations, bringing stories and traditions from Robert's childhood that had been overshadowed by Margaret's formality. For the first time, Haley heard tales of her father's early artistic talents, drawings and sculptures Margaret had discouraged as impractical, but Harold had secretly preserved. "You have his eye for composition," Harold told Haley, showing her childhood sketches Robert had made. Margaret wanted him focused on business, but he had real talent. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" Robert asked, visibly moved by these recovered memories. "Fear," Harold admitted simply. "The same fear that kept me silent about so many things. I'm trying to do better now." As we approached the anniversary of our dramatic departure from Connecticut, Robert, Haley and I sat by our fireplace reflecting on the year's transformation. "I was thinking about worth today," Haley said thoughtfully. "How we measure it, how others try to define it for us." "What conclusions did you reach?" I asked. "That worth isn't something other people can give or take from you," she replied. "Grandmother tried to make me believe my worth was less because my body works differently. But my worth was always whole, always complete. I just needed to be somewhere I could recognize that truth." "That is profound wisdom," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "Wisdom your grandmother has yet to learn at 70 years old. Do you regret leaving?" I asked him, the question I'd sometimes wondered but never voiced. "Not for a single moment," he answered without hesitation. "My only regret is not doing it sooner. The family name, the business connections, the social standing, they were all just golden handcuffs. What we have now, this authentic life we're building, this is true wealth." As we celebrate this new Christmas with chosen family rather than obligatory relations, I find myself reflecting on what real family means. It isn't about shared DNA or inherited traditions. It isn't about mansions or designer decorations or perfect family photos. True family is about belonging exactly as you are. It's about being valued for your unique qualities rather than punished for your differences. It's about unconditional love that doesn't require performing or pretending. Sometimes the bravest act of love isn't staying and enduring. Sometimes it's walking away and creating something new, something true. The envelope Robert pulled out that Christmas night wasn't just a deed to a house. It was permission for all of us to redefine family on our own terms. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family obligation and protecting someone you love? What would you have done in our situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more authentic family stories. Remember that your worth is innate and complete, regardless of how others might try to diminish it. Thank you for listening, and may your holidays be filled with genuine love and acceptance. My name is Naomi Morrison, 32, and for as long as I can remember, Thanksgiving meant our family gathering at Silver Pine Resort. 20 years of traditions, photos, and memories tied to that exclusive lodge. Then last week, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom, "You're not welcome here anymore." No explanation. Just banishment. After years of criticism and judgment, something inside me snapped. I remembered I was an authorized contact on their precious booking. One phone call later, I informed the resort, cancel the Morrison family's permanent reservation. Now they know exactly what burning bridges feels like. Before I dive deeper into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If this family drama already has you intrigued, hit that like button and subscribe to catch more stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, what happened next shocked even me. To understand why canceling a resort reservation felt like dropping a nuclear bomb on my family, you need to know the Morrisons. My mother, Marilyn, is the kind of woman who checks her makeup before answering the phone. Everything in her world revolves around appearances, the right clothes, the right connections, the right zip code. She chairs 3 charity committees not because she cares about the causes, but because it puts her in proximity to old money. Her constant refrain throughout my childhood, "What will people think?" My father, Ronald Morrison, built his real estate development company from scratch, a fact he mentions within 5 minutes of meeting anyone new. Success came early and stayed, transforming him from a hungry entrepreneur into a man who measures worth in square footage and investment returns. He's not exactly cold, just conditional. Love and approval in our household were always tied to achievement and conformity. Derek, my older brother by 3 years, is the golden child incarnate. Cornell Business School, followed by a seamless integration into Dad's company where he now serves as executive vice president. He married Charlotte, a pediatric surgeon from a good family, Mom's highest praise, and they have 2 perfect children who already attend the right preschool. Derek absorbed our parents' values like a sponge: work hard, maintain appearances, and above all, protect the Morrison name. My younger sister Haley occupies the complicated middle ground. She followed the approved path: business degree, appropriate job in marketing, engagement to a suitable man from our social circle, but I've always sensed a restlessness in her. She shoots me sympathetic glances during family conflicts, but rarely speaks up. When pushed, she'll defend our parents with "they just want what's best for us," though her eyes tell a different story. Then there's Silver Pine Resort, my father's crown jewel of social achievement. Located in the Adirondacks, it's not just expensive, it's exclusive. Their membership and booking policy operates on references and connections, not merely money. 23 years ago, Dad secured our family's permanent Thanksgiving reservation by helping the owner navigate a complicated zoning issue. This standing reservation became his favorite status symbol, more valuable than his collection of rare watches or his membership at Oakmont Country Club. The annual gathering includes a rotating cast of uncles, aunts, cousins, and strategic business associates Dad wants to impress. Thanksgiving at Silver Pine isn't just a family holiday, it's a demonstration of the Morrison family's elite standing in the community. Dad mentions it casually in business meetings year-round. We'll have to continue this conversation at Silver Pine over Thanksgiving. My position as family outsider wasn't something I chose deliberately. I simply couldn't contort myself into the Morrison mold. While Derek embraced real estate and Haley opted for a marketing career that Dad deemed suitable for a young woman, I pursued art. My studio specializes in large-scale, mixed-media installations that have found modest success in galleries across New England. Not enough fame to impress my parents, but enough to support myself, a fact they consistently overlook. My more liberal political views create additional friction at family gatherings. While the Morrisons donate to conservative candidates and causes, I've participated in climate protests and volunteer at a community art center in a neighborhood my mother refers to as transitional, her euphemism for gentrifying. Previous Thanksgivings have been exercises in endurance. Despite being a successful, independent adult, I'm still seated at the kids' table alongside teenage cousins. My mother introduces me with qualifiers. This is Naomi, our artist, the slight emphasis conveying volumes about her disappointment. Dad periodically asks about my real job prospects as though my career is a phase I'll outgrow. Last year, I overheard my Aunt Judith ask Mom if I was still doing that art thing, to which my mother replied, "We're hoping she'll get it out of her system soon." I was standing 6 feet away, holding a platter of roasted vegetables I'd prepared. They both saw me but continued their conversation without acknowledgement. Yet despite this history of microaggressions and dismissals, I continued showing up. Thanksgiving at Silver Pine was woven into my identity, even as it represented a world that consistently rejected who I really am. The familiar rooms, the view of the lake, the cranberry sauce that only Aunt Barbara knew how to make properly, these things kept me coming back, hoping that someday I might be fully accepted while remaining fully myself. What I didn't realize was how thoroughly impossible that dream was, at least until Victor entered my life and forced everything to change. I met Victor Santiago at the Boston Spring Arts Festival, where my installation shared a corner with his sculpture series. While I was arranging lighting for my exhibit, he was struggling with a metal stand that kept tilting. I lent him my adjustable clamps, and he offered me coffee from his thermos in return. By the end of the setup day, we'd exchanged numbers. Victor wasn't like the men my family considered appropriate. He worked as a firefighter with the Boston Fire Department and sculpted metal art in his off hours. His father had immigrated from Puerto Rico, his mother from the Dominican Republic. He'd grown up in Dorchester, attended public schools, and worked his way through community college before earning a scholarship to finish his degree in fire science. What struck me most about Victor was his complete comfort with himself. He never apologized for his blue-collar job or treated his art as a hobby. "I save lives and I make beautiful things," he once told me. Not sure what else I need to feel complete. His hands were calloused from both professions, his laugh was unreserved, and his opinions were offered without concern for how they might be perceived. Our relationship developed naturally over shared meals, gallery visits, and long walks through Boston neighborhoods I'd never properly explored, despite living here for years. When I told him about my family, he listened without judgment, but didn't minimize the dysfunction either. "Sounds like they love the idea of you more than the actual you," he observed after I recounted a particularly tense phone call with my mother. For months into our relationship, I couldn't postpone the inevitable any longer. My parents had been asking increasingly pointed questions about my social life, their euphemism for checking if I was dating someone suitable. I invited Victor to Sunday dinner at my parents' Beacon Hill brownstone, hoping that his warmth and genuine character would overcome whatever prejudices they might harbor. I prepared Victor as best I could. "My father will ask about your 5-year plan," I warned. "My mother will notice if your shoes don't match your belt. Derek will probably Google you before dinner." Victor squeezed my hand. "I've run into burning buildings, Naomi. I think I can handle one dinner." The evening was worse than I'd imagined. Mom's smile froze when she opened the door to find Victor standing there in his neatly pressed button-down shirt that didn't bear the right label. Dad's handshake was perfunctory as his eyes assessed Victor's watch, simple stainless steel, and shoes, clean but not designer. Dinner conversation became an interrogation. Dad launched into questions about Victor's career trajectory, barely concealing his disapproval when Victor explained the shift schedule of firefighters and his contentment with his position. "But surely you have ambitions beyond that?" Dad pressed. "Department chief? Commissioner?" "I'm focused on being the best at my current job," Victor replied. "Advancement will come if it's meant to, but I don't measure my success by my title. My mother concentrated on more indirect digs. How interesting that you found time for art with such a demanding schedule. It must be challenging to pursue something so impractical. The slight pause conveyed exactly what she thought of both our creative pursuits. Derek, predictably, had done his research. Santiago. I looked up your department record. You were involved in that warehouse rescue last year, weren't you? Risky move going back in after the evacuation order. Victor met his gaze directly. 3 people were still unaccounted for. We got them out. Could have cost the department a good man, Derek continued, his implication clear. Victor was reckless, unsuitable. Throughout the dinner, Haley remained mostly silent, occasionally trying to redirect conversation to safer topics, shooting me apologetic glances when these attempts failed. By dessert, the tension was unbearable. Still, Victor maintained his composure, answering each barbed question with dignity. When we left, he waited until we were in the car before letting out a long breath. Well, that was educational. I'm so sorry, I began, but he shook his head. Don't apologize for them. Ever. 2 months later, Victor proposed during a weekend trip to the coast. It wasn't grand or showy, just the 2 of us on a quiet beach at sunset, his grandmother's restored ring in a simple box. I said yes immediately, feeling for perhaps the first time that I was choosing my own path rather than reacting to my family's expectations. We agreed to share the news in person. I harbored a tiny, irrational hope that an engagement might finally earn their respect, that commitment would legitimize our relationship in their eyes. The announcement dinner started tense and descended rapidly. Mom's face went pale when she spotted the ring. Dad's jaw tightened. Derek exchanged a look with his wife that screamed disapproval. Don't you think this is rather sudden? Mom finally managed. We've been together 8 months, I replied. Derek and Charlotte got engaged after 6. That was different, Dad interjected. They had known each other socially for years before dating. What followed was an increasingly heated discussion about family standards and appropriate matches that rapidly abandoned any pretense of politeness. Mom suggested we were rushing into things because of my biological clock. I was 32, after all. Dad questioned how we would maintain a suitable lifestyle on our combined incomes. Derek wondered aloud if we'd considered the practical implications of our different backgrounds. Throughout it all, they spoke as if Victor wasn't sitting right there at the table, hearing every word. When Mom mentioned that connections and background do matter in the long term, Victor finally spoke up. With all due respect, Mrs. Morrison, what matters is that I love your daughter for exactly who she is, not for who you wish she would be. I will support her art, her independence, and her choices, which is something I'm not sure you've ever done. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad's face flushed red as he started to respond, but I stood up, napkin thrown on the table. We're leaving. When you're ready to accept that this is happening with or without your blessing, let me know. We walked out amid my mother's protests and my father's stony silence. In the weeks that followed, communication dwindled to brief, cold text exchanges and occasional calls with Haley, who tried unsuccessfully to mediate. I didn't realize then that the worst was yet to come, or that Thanksgiving would become the battleground for the most dramatic confrontation our family had ever experienced. After the disastrous engagement dinner, I tried multiple avenues of reconciliation. I sent thoughtful emails explaining why Victor was important to me. I left voicemails suggesting coffee with Mom to talk things through. I even mailed handwritten notes expressing my hope that we could find common ground. The responses, when they came at all, were brief and frigid. Dad sent a 3-word text, "Give it time." Mom's emails were formal and distant, focusing on neutral topics like her garden club while ignoring my attempts to discuss Victor. Derek didn't respond at all. Only Haley maintained regular contact, though our conversations had an undercurrent of tension. She became my reluctant intermediary, passing along family news and trying to soften harsh messages. They just need time to adjust, Haley said during one of our coffee meetups. You have to understand, this isn't what they pictured for you. And what did they picture? Someone exactly like Charlotte? A man with the right pedigree and connections who would finally fix me. Haley looked down at her latte. Something like that, I guess. As weeks passed with little improvement, I began noticing concerning patterns. During our regular Sunday calls, Mom would accidentally mention holiday plans without including me. When I'd ask directly about these events, she'd backtrack awkwardly. Oh, did I not mention? We thought with your busy schedule, you might prefer to make your own arrangements this year. The annual Thanksgiving planning call happened without me. I only discovered it had taken place when Haley let it slip during one of our meetups. Mom assigned you the cranberry relish, she said, then froze, realizing her mistake. When was the planning call? I asked. Last Thursday, she admitted. Mom said she tried to reach you. She hadn't. I checked my call logs and messages to confirm. Later that week, I overheard a conversation between Mom and Aunt Judith when I called and Dad answered on the landline but didn't properly hang up before transferring the call. Just a phase with this firefighter, Mom was saying. By Thanksgiving, I'm sure she'll have come to her senses. And if she brings him? Aunt Judith asked. Ronald has made it very clear that won't be happening. My attempts at sending peace offerings were either rejected or acknowledged with minimal grace. I had a basket of Mom's favorite imported teas delivered. She sent a formal thank you note as she would to a business associate. I offered Dad tickets to a jazz performance by an artist he admired. He claimed a scheduling conflict. The situation escalated beyond cold shoulders and passive aggression when Victor received an unexpected visitor at the fire station. My father, dressed in his power suit, requested a private conversation during Victor's lunch break. Victor recounted the exchange later that evening, his voice calm but his eyes troubled. Your father offered to invest in my future, he said. $100,000 to, in his words, pursue opportunities elsewhere. I felt the blood drain from my face. He tried to buy you off? He presented it as seed money for my sculpture work if I moved to the West Coast. The condition being, of course, that I end things with you first. What did you say? Victor took my hands in his. I told him I'm not for sale, and neither is what we have together. While Dad was attempting bribery, Mom employed different tactics. Friends began asking me strange questions about Victor, revealing that Mom had been spreading carefully crafted concerns. I heard he has a dangerous job. Or Marilyn mentioned he might be struggling financially. The most direct threat came from Derek, who called one evening after apparently having several drinks. You need to understand what's at stake, he said without preamble. Dad's making changes to the family trust. If you go through with this marriage, you're out. Is that supposed to scare me? I asked. I've never counted on that money. It's not just money, Naomi. It's your connection to this family. Think about what you're throwing away. As Thanksgiving approached, I made increasingly desperate attempts at compromise. I suggested bringing Victor just for dessert rather than the full dinner. I offered to help with extra preparation to demonstrate goodwill. I even proposed having a separate celebration with my parents the day after Thanksgiving. Each suggestion was rebuffed. The pattern was becoming clear. Victor was not welcome, and if I chose him, I was choosing exile. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I made one final attempt. I called Mom directly, prepared to negotiate any reasonable arrangement. The Silver Pine Reservation includes our room assignment, I said, trying to sound practical. Victor and I could stay in a separate cabin if that would make everyone more comfortable. That won't be necessary, Mom replied, her voice clipped. So we can come? I asked, hope rising. Naomi, she sighed, as if explaining something to a child. Your father and I have discussed this extensively. We feel it would be best if you took this holiday to reconsider your choices. Perhaps by Christmas, you'll have a clearer perspective. You're uninviting me from Thanksgiving? Because of who I'm marrying. We're giving you space to make the right decision, she corrected. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence until my phone buzzed with a text message. From Mom, You're not welcome here anymore. Seconds later, more messages followed. You're ruining this family's reputation with your selfishness. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Until you come to your senses about this inappropriate relationship, we think it's best you distance yourself from family gatherings. I called Haley immediately, hardly able to form coherent sentences through my shock and anger. Did you know about this? I demanded. Her hesitation told me everything. They had a family meeting last night, she finally admitted. A family meeting? Without me? I am family, Haley. I know, I tried to tell them this was extreme, but Dad was adamant. Derek backed him up, and you know how Mom follows their lead on these things. And you? Did you defend me at all? Another telling pause. I suggested waiting until after the holidays to make any decisions. Great. Thanks for the support, I said bitterly. What did you expect, Naomi? You've always pushed boundaries, but this time you're really challenging everything they value. Did you honestly think they would just accept Victor without any adjustment period? I expected them to care about my happiness. I expected my sister to stand up for me. I expected better from all of you. I hung up feeling utterly alone, excluded from my own family by a unanimous vote, cast out from traditions I'd participated in my entire life. The message couldn't have been clearer. Conditional love had reached its limit. I had finally asked for too much acceptance. What my family didn't realize was that they had also pushed me to my limit, and I was about to show them exactly what that meant. After reading Mom's text message, I sat on my apartment floor for nearly an hour, my mind cycling through shock, hurt, and disbelief. When Victor came home and found me there, I couldn't even speak. I just handed him my phone with the messages still displayed on screen. "Oh, Naomi," he said softly, sitting beside me and pulling me into his arms. "I'm so sorry." The tears came then, hot and relentless. I cried for the family I thought I had, for the conditional love that had finally reached its breaking point, for every Thanksgiving memory that was now tainted by this rejection. "We'll make our own plans," Victor suggested gently. "My sister Maria already invited us to join them. Or we could take a trip, go somewhere completely different." But his words barely registered through the fog of betrayal consuming me. I pulled out an old photo album and flipped through images of past family gatherings at Silver Pine Resort. Dad carving the turkey, Mom arranging her signature centerpiece, Derek and I as teenagers pretending to fight over the last piece of pie. Had any of it been real? Or was family just a performance we all maintained until someone went off script? As evening turned to night, the initial shock began giving way to something harder and sharper. Anger. Not the flashing, temporary kind that comes and goes, but a deep, smoldering fury built on years of accumulated slights and judgments. I began recalling other instances when my family had used traditions as weapons. My 25th birthday celebration postponed, when I took a gallery job instead of joining Dad's company. Christmas gifts noticeably less thoughtful the year I moved in with a boyfriend they disapproved of. Access to family events had always been the currency they used to control behavior. And Silver Pine Resort was the crown jewel of that control system. Dad mentioned the exclusive booking in every holiday conversation, reminding everyone that our family tradition existed through his influence and connections. The annual Thanksgiving gathering wasn't just a holiday, it was a demonstration of Ronald Morrison's power and status. "The resort," I said suddenly, sitting up from where I'd been leaning against Victor on the couch. "What about it?" he asked. 3 years ago, when we had that big family reunion with all the extended relatives, Dad added me as an authorized contact on the booking. I remembered the day clearly. We needed someone to coordinate with the resort about special meal requirements and activity schedules while Dad handled a work emergency. He'd called the management, authorized me as a contact on their permanent reservation, and handed me the responsibility. The manager, Mr. Phillips, treated me like visiting royalty after that. Upgraded my room, sent complimentary wine, arranged special hiking guides. Being a Morrison at Silver Pine opens every door. Victor watched me carefully. What are you thinking, Naomi? I stood up and paced the living room, my mind racing. Dad values that booking more than almost anything. It's not just a vacation spot, it's proof of his status. The resort has a 10-year waiting list for holiday reservations. They only have 26 cabins, and the Thanksgiving spots are practically hereditary. And you're an authorized contact, Victor said slowly, beginning to understand. I could cancel it, I whispered, almost afraid to voice the thought. With one phone call, I could take away the thing Dad uses to remind everyone how important he is. Victor was silent for a long moment. That's a nuclear option, Naomi. There would be no coming back from it. Is there any coming back anyway? I asked. They've made their choice very clear. I'm already not welcome. Sleep on it, he advised. This kind of decision shouldn't be made while you're still processing the shock. I nodded, agreeing in principle, though my mind was already turning over the possibilities. Throughout that night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, weighing my options, considering consequences, remembering my father's frequent statement at business dinners. Family loyalty means everything in the Morrison household. Where was that loyalty now? By morning, the hurt had crystallized into resolve. While Victor showered, I looked up the resort's contact information. My finger hovered over the call button for several minutes as I considered one last time what this action would mean. This wasn't just about Thanksgiving. This was about years of conditional love, of being valued for what I represented rather than who I was. This was about finally showing my family that their control tactics worked both ways. I made the call at 7:42 a.m. The resort's front desk transferred me to Mr. Phillips, the manager who remembered me immediately. Miss Morrison, wonderful to hear from you. Is there something I can assist with before your family's arrival next week? I took a deep breath. Actually, Mr. Phillips, I'm calling about our reservation. Of course. Did you need to add special meal requests? Or perhaps additional activities? No, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need to cancel the Morrison family's permanent booking. Silence filled the line. Cancel? The entire reservation? Miss Morrison, your family has held this booking for over 20 years. Are you certain? I am authorized on the account, correct? Yes, of course. Your father added you several years ago, but... Then yes, I'm certain. The reservation needs to be canceled. Not just for this Thanksgiving, but permanently. Mr. Phillips's discomfort was palpable even through the phone. This is highly unusual. Perhaps you'd like to speak with your father first? I could. Mr. Phillips, I interrupted, summoning every ounce of my father's authoritative tone. I understand your concern, but I am an authorized contact with full privileges on this account. Unless that information is incorrect. No, it's correct, he confirmed reluctantly. Then please proceed with the cancellation. The Morrison family will no longer require our standing reservation at Silver Pine Resort. After several more attempts to dissuade me, Mr. Phillips finally acquiesced. Very well, Miss Morrison. The reservation has been canceled. Should your family wish to book again in the future, I should warn you that Thanksgiving availability is extremely limited. We cannot guarantee similar accommodations would be available. I understand completely. Thank you for your assistance. After hanging up, I sat in perfect stillness, experiencing a complex mixture of emotions, power and dread, vindication and grief, finality and uncertainty. There was no going back now. The bridge wasn't just burned, I had detonated it completely. Victor found me still sitting there, phone in hand, face pale but composed. Did you do it? He asked quietly. I nodded. They wanted me to know my place. Now they know theirs. The first response came 37 minutes after I ended the call with Mr. Phillips. My phone exploded with notifications, 3 missed calls from Dad, 5 from Mom, texts from Derek, and a single message from Haley. What did you do? I listened to Dad's voicemail first, his voice tightly controlled but vibrating with rage. You will call the resort immediately and fix this catastrophic mistake, or the legal consequences will be severe. This is not a game, Naomi. Mom was less restrained. How could you do this to us? To the entire family? 23 years of tradition destroyed by your selfishness. The Whitmores and the Clarks always join us for Thanksgiving dinner at Silver Pine. What am I supposed to tell them? Do you have any idea of the social embarrassment you've caused? Derek's texts escalated from disbelief to explicit threats. Tell me you didn't just cancel Silver Pine. Dad is apoplectic. Fix this now. You've lost your mind. This will cost you everything. Hope your firefighter boyfriend is worth being cut off completely because that's what's happening. Dad's calling his lawyer. Prepare yourself. I turned off my phone and went to work at the gallery, where I spent the day mechanically guiding visitors through our new exhibition while my internal world collapsed and reformed around this new reality. By closing time, I felt strangely calm. The decision was made, the consequences were coming, and in some bizarre way, it was a relief to have the conflict in the open rather than simmering beneath forced politeness. When I finally turned my phone back on that evening, the situation had escalated dramatically. My extended family had mobilized, aunts, uncles, and cousins taking sides in a family civil war I hadn't realized I was starting. Most supported my parents, sending messages expressing disappointment and shock. A few remained neutral, asking for both sides of the story. None openly took my side. The flying monkeys arrived next, family, friends, and distant relations reaching out with concern disguised as guilt trips. Your mother is absolutely devastated. Your father had to take blood pressure medication. I've never seen your parents so hurt. Whatever the disagreement, family should come first. Social media became another battlefield. While no one mentioned me directly, family members posted pointed remarks about loyalty, respect, and traditions. My cousin Andrea shared a throwback Thursday photo of last year's Thanksgiving at Silver Pine with the caption, "Missing this special place and our family traditions. Some things should be sacred." Dad's retaliation extended beyond angry messages. He contacted Lawrence, the owner of the gallery where I worked, supposedly to discuss a potential donation, but actually to make veiled comments about my emotional instability and concerning behavior. Lawrence, to his credit, recognized the manipulation and informed me immediately. The harassment took creative forms. Food deliveries I hadn't ordered began arriving at my apartment, 15 pizzas one night, 8 Chinese food orders the next. Magazine subscriptions appeared in my mailbox, Brides, Parenting, Conservative Quarterly, each a little dig at my life choices. Family friends coincidentally appeared at cafes where I regularly worked, at my gallery, even at the grocery store, each expressing concern while fishing for information they could report back to my parents. The most direct attack came in the form of a certified letter from my father's attorney, claiming I had fraudulently misrepresented my authority to the resort and demanding I rectify the situation immediately or face legal consequences. Victor's lawyer friend reviewed it and confirmed it was mostly intimidation with little legal standing. I had been properly authorized on the account. Through it all, Victor remained steadfast. When I worried about drawing him into my family drama, he simply shrugged. I faced worse than angry rich people. His own family offered their home for Thanksgiving, his mother calling to assure me I was welcome regardless of the circumstances. He helped me secure our apartment after Derek showed up unannounced one evening, pounding on the door and demanding to speak with me. Victor installed a security camera, redirected our mail to a post office box, and screened calls when the situation became overwhelming. You don't have to fight this battle alone, he reminded me. That's what partnership means. Most surprising were the unexpected allies who emerged from the wreckage. My Aunt Barbara, Mom's sister who had distanced herself from family gatherings years ago for reasons never explained, sent a brief email. Standing up to the Morrisons takes courage. Call me if you need someone who understands. 2 cousins privately messaged their support, admitting they'd long found the family dynamics toxic but lacked the courage to challenge them. Lawrence not only defended me to my father, but gave me time off when the stress became visible in my work. Our neighbor Mrs. Castillo, who had witnessed Derek's door-pounding episode, began accepting packages for us and keeping an eye on our apartment when we were out. Family should lift you up, not tear you down, she told me, patting my hand. My mother didn't speak to me for 10 years when I married my husband. Sometimes the hard boundaries are necessary. A week after the cancellation, as the initial shock waves began to settle into a steady barrage rather than a tsunami, I received an unexpected text from Haley. Can we talk? Just us. Tomorrow at 2? The cafe on Marlborough. I showed Victor the message. Are you going to go? He asked. I think I have to, I replied. She's the only one who might actually listen. I didn't know then that this meeting would change everything, revealing family secrets that would transform my understanding of what had really been happening all along. I arrived at the cafe early, claiming a corner table with good privacy. When Haley walked in 15 minutes late, I barely recognized her. My perpetually put-together sister looked exhausted, hair hastily pulled back, minimal makeup, dark circles under her eyes. Thanks for coming, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. Her voice lacked its usual upbeat quality. You look terrible, I replied, then winced at my bluntness. She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's been a challenging week at the Morrison household. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us as the server delivered Haley's latte. I waited, determined not to speak first. This meeting was her idea. Let her direct it. What you did, she finally began, stirring her coffee without drinking it. It's causing bigger problems than you probably realize. I'm aware it upset everyone, I said carefully. No, it's more than that. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Dad's company is having cash flow issues. Has been for months. The Silver Pine Thanksgiving isn't just a family tradition. It's where he meets with 3 major investors who've been keeping projects afloat. This revelation surprised me. Dad's business had always seemed unshakable. How bad is it? Bad enough that he's leveraged the house. She looked around nervously before continuing. Mom doesn't even know. The resort cancellation doesn't just embarrass him socially, it threatens actual business relationships he desperately needs right now. I absorbed this information, recalibrating my understanding of my father's extreme reaction. Why are you telling me this? Haley's eyes filled with unexpected tears. Because I'm tired, Naomi. Tired of the secrets and the pretending. You were always the brave one, doing what you wanted despite their disapproval. I've spent my entire life contorting myself to fit their expectations, and what has it gotten me? A job I hate, an engagement to Bradley that feels more like a business merger than a relationship, and panic attacks I hide from everyone. Her candor stunned me. Haley had always seemed content with her prescribed path. I didn't know, I said softly. Nobody knows. That's the Morrison way, isn't it? Perfect appearance, messy reality. She wiped away a tear. The night they decided to uninvite you from Thanksgiving, I should have defended you more strongly. I wanted to, but I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of ending up like you, cut off, criticized. But watching how they've handled this, how Dad threatened and Mom manipulated. I keep wondering if being cut off might actually be freedom. As our conversation continued, Haley revealed more about the family's true financial interdependence. Dad had funded Derek's house purchase. Mom's extravagant lifestyle was entirely dependent on Dad's company's success. Even Haley's position at her marketing firm had been secured through Dad's business connections. We're all just pieces on his chessboard, she concluded. You're the only one who escaped. Then came the most surprising revelation about Silver Pine Resort itself. The Thanksgiving gathering isn't just a family tradition, Haley explained. It's a business event disguised as a holiday. Dad writes off the entire thing as a business expense. Those coincidental meetings with business associates, all carefully planned. He even schedules specific conversations to take place during activities so he can deduct them. Are you saying our family Thanksgiving is a tax scam? I asked incredulously. Not entirely, but partially. It's why he was so insistent about keeping detailed records of who attended and what was discussed. Remember those family meeting notes he always took? Those were for his accountant. Before I could process this information, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something prompted me to answer. Is this Naomi Morrison? A male voice asked. Yes, who's calling? James Whitford, owner of Silver Pine Resort. I hope you don't mind me contacting you directly. Ronald Morrison has been a valued guest for many years, and this situation is unusual. I was hoping we might discuss our resolution. Haley raised her eyebrows as I explained who was calling. Mr. Whitford, I appreciate your concern, but this is a family matter, I replied. I understand, but your father seems to believe there's been a misunderstanding. He's quite distressed. There's no misunderstanding. I was authorized on the account and made a decision. Perhaps we could meet to discuss options? I'll be in Boston tomorrow on other business. A neutral conversation might help ease tensions. After some consideration, I agreed to meet him at my gallery the following afternoon. When I hung up, Haley was watching me intently. Are you going to reinstate the reservation? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to stand firm, but another part wonders if this has gone far enough. Whatever you decide, Haley said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I support you. It's time someone in this family took a stand. The meeting with James Whitford led to something unexpected, a suggestion that all relevant parties meet face-to-face to resolve the situation. Which is how, 3 days later, I found myself sitting in a private room at the Four Seasons Hotel across from my parents, with Derek, Haley, Victor, and Mr. Whitford in attendance. The tension was immediately palpable. Mom couldn't look directly at me. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I worried for his teeth, and Derek radiated barely contained fury. Only Haley offered a small, encouraging smile. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Whitford began diplomatically. I believe family traditions are important, and I hope we can find a path forward that honors the long relationship between Silver Pine Resort and the Morrison family. Dad spoke first, his voice icily controlled. There's a simple solution. Naomi will call the resort, apologize for her impulsive behavior, and reinstate our reservation. End of discussion. That's not how this works, I replied calmly. I'm not a child who made a mistake. I made a deliberate choice after being told I was no longer welcome at a family gathering. You weren't uninvited from the family, Mom interjected, finally looking at me. We simply suggested you reconsider your relationship choices before joining family functions. Victor, who had remained silent, straightened in his chair. You specifically texted, and I quote, "You're not welcome here anymore." That seems unambiguous. This doesn't concern you, Derek snapped. Actually, it does, Victor replied evenly. Since your objection to me is the root of this situation. Our objection, Dad corrected, is to Naomi's pattern of choices that consistently undermine family values and traditions. What values exactly? I asked. Appearances over authenticity? Status over happiness? Conditional love? Don't be melodramatic, Mom sighed. We have certain standards. Standards that apparently don't include basic respect for my autonomy, I interrupted. I'm 32 years old, successful in my career, and I've found someone who genuinely supports me. Why isn't that enough for you? Because it reflects poorly on this family. Dad burst out, his composure cracking. Everything we do, everything we are, is built on reputation and connections. Your choices directly threaten that foundation. So that's what this is really about, I said, pieces falling into place. Appearances. Silver Pine isn't about family togetherness. It's about showing off to your business associates and writing off a luxury vacation on your taxes. Dad's face paled slightly. That's not. I know about the business meetings disguised as family gatherings, I continued. I know about the financial problems with your company. I know this isn't about me or Victor at all. It's about your image and your bottom line." Silence descended as my words hung in the air. Derek looked from me to Dad, confusion replacing anger. "What financial problems?" And just like that, the carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Dad attempted damage control, but once questioned directly by Derek, his vague answers only raised more suspicions. Mom, realizing what was happening, tried to redirect the conversation, but Haley unexpectedly intervened. "I think it's time for honesty," my sister said firmly. "All of this performative family unity is exhausting and damaging to everyone." What followed was the most honest conversation the Morrison family had ever experienced. Dad reluctantly admitted his business was over-leveraged. Mom confessed her social anxiety about losing status among her peers. Derek revealed his resentment at the pressure to maintain the family image while carrying increasing responsibility for the struggling company. Through it all, I maintained my position calmly but firmly. "I won't be conditionally included in this family. Either you accept me fully, including my relationship with Victor, or you accept the consequences of your conditions." As tensions gradually diffused and honest communication replaced accusation, I noticed a subtle shift in my father's demeanor. The rigid authority figure began to show cracks, revealing glimpses of uncertainty and, surprisingly, respect. "You've always been stubborn," he finally said, a hint of reluctant admiration in his voice. "Just like me." "I prefer to call it principled," I replied. For the first time in my adult life, I saw my father truly look at me, not as a disappointment or a problem to be managed, but as an individual with her own strength and conviction. The meeting concluded without definitive resolution about the reservation. Mr. Whitford, who had witnessed the entire family drama with remarkable diplomacy, suggested everyone take time to consider next steps. But something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic. The power balance had realigned, and for once, I wasn't the one at a disadvantage. As we prepared to leave, Dad approached Victor directly for the first time. "You stood your ground well today," he said stiffly. "I still have concerns, but I can acknowledge that your loyalty to my daughter is commendable." It wasn't acceptance, but it was the beginning of something new. A family built on honesty rather than appearance. A relationship based on mutual respect rather than control. The road ahead would be long and undoubtedly complicated. But for the first time, I felt we might be walking it on equal footing. 1 year later. "Can you grab the cranberry sauce from the fridge?" I called to Victor as I adjusted the temperature on our apartment's temperamental oven. The scent of roasting turkey filled our small but cozy living room, where a mismatched collection of chairs had been arranged around 2 tables, pushed together to accommodate our guests. Our first Thanksgiving as hosts bore little resemblance to the formal, picture-perfect gatherings at Silver Pine Resort. Our plates didn't match, we were using borrowed folding chairs from neighbors, and the menu represented a multicultural potluck rather than traditional New England fare. Yet the atmosphere buzzed with authentic warmth and laughter I'd rarely experienced at family holidays. Victor's sister Maria and her husband brought homemade empanadas. My colleague from the gallery contributed a vegetarian stuffing. Mrs. Castillo from downstairs arrived with her famous flan. 2 of Victor's firefighter friends came with their partners, bringing beer and stories. My Aunt Barbara, after years of avoiding family gatherings, sat comfortably on our couch sipping wine and chatting with Victor's mother about gardening. Most surprising was Haley's presence. After last year's confrontation, she had embarked on her own journey of independence, postponing her wedding to Bradley indefinitely, finding a new job without Dad's connections, and gradually building a relationship with me that wasn't filtered through family expectations. "This is nothing like Mom's Thanksgiving," she observed, helping me arrange serving dishes. "It's so much better." The journey to this new tradition hadn't been smooth. After the hotel confrontation, my parents retreated to regroup, eventually securing a last-minute Thanksgiving reservation at another resort, prestigious, but not Silver Pine. Dad's business weathered its financial challenges through some painful restructuring that Derek now spoke about with pride rather than shame. Mom gradually adjusted to a slightly less extravagant lifestyle, finding unexpected satisfaction in more authentic relationships with fewer social obligations. Our family's new dynamic evolved slowly over months of careful negotiation. Coffee with Mom became a monthly occurrence, sometimes tense, occasionally tearful, but increasingly honest. Dad and I established professional respect before attempting personal reconciliation, finding common ground in discussions about business ethics and arts patronage. Derek was the slowest to adapt, but eventually, his wife Charlotte created a bridge by inviting Victor and me to their son's birthday party. Watching Victor patiently teaching their 5-year-old how to shape clay softened something in my brother's rigid worldview. 6 months after the Silver Pine incident, Victor and I began planning our wedding, a small celebration that reflected our values rather than anyone else's expectations. The guest list became an exercise in boundary setting as we included only people who genuinely supported our relationship. Mom initially struggled with our vision of a simple ceremony in a sculpture garden rather than the society event she'd always imagined for her daughters. "Just 30 guests?" she'd asked incredulously. "Where will everyone sit for the formal dinner?" "On blankets on the grass," I'd replied. "We're having a picnic reception with food trucks." Her horror gradually gave way to reluctant acceptance and eventually genuine curiosity about our unconventional choices. By the time I invited her to help select my dress, still white but designed by an emerging local artist rather than a prestigious label, she had begun to understand that different didn't mean lesser. Dad's adjustment manifested in unexpected ways. After initially threatening to withdraw financial support for the wedding, support we hadn't asked for or expected, he instead offered a gift that showed remarkable growth. He recommended Victor for a position on the board of the city's art foundation, recognizing both his artistic talent and his integrity. Most surprising was how Haley flourished once freed from the strictest family expectations. She ended her engagement to Bradley with remarkable conviction, telling our shocked parents, "I want what Naomi has, someone who loves me for myself, not for what I represent." She began therapy, changed careers to pursue environmental policy, and started dating a kindergarten teacher who made her laugh like I'd never heard before. The Morrison family adapted to its new configuration with varying degrees of grace. Thanksgiving at Silver Pine became a closed chapter rather than an ongoing tradition. After much discussion, my father did eventually reach out to Mr. Whitford to explain that our family would be creating new holiday traditions moving forward. The permanent reservation remained canceled, though not out of spite but from genuine recognition that we had outgrown what it represented. Our diverse gathering of friends and chosen family in our modest apartment represented everything the Silver Pine Thanksgivings had lacked: authenticity, acceptance, and joy untethered from performance or status. As we prepared to sit down for dinner, the doorbell rang one last time. Victor answered and returned with a surprising addition: my parents, standing awkwardly in the entryway with a bottle of wine and a homemade pie. "We were just going to drop these off," Mom explained, her eyes taking in the eclectic gathering with visible uncertainty. "We don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," I said, meaning it. "There's plenty of food if you'd like to stay." They exchanged a glance, years of ingrained formality battling with the obvious warmth of our gathering. Dad adjusted his tie. He was significantly overdressed for our casual dinner, and nodded. "We'd like that," he said simply. The meal that followed wasn't perfect. Conversation occasionally stumbled into awkward pauses when different worlds collided. Mom winced slightly when she had to eat turkey off a paper plate when we ran out of real dishes. Dad seemed unsure how to participate in the relaxed, interruption-filled storytelling that characterized our friends' interactions. But when Victor raised his glass for a toast, the divisions seemed less important than the connections. "To family," he said, "not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose and build together. To boundaries that protect us and bridges that connect us. And to Naomi, Who had the courage to demand better from everyone in this room, including me? As glasses clinked and conversations resumed, I caught my father watching me with an expression I'd spent my life seeking but had stopped expecting: genuine respect. My mother, deep in conversation with Victor's mom about pie crust techniques, was laughing without self-consciousness. Haley, seated between her new boyfriend and Aunt Barbara, looked more relaxed than I could remember seeing her at any family function. We had all lost something when I canceled that reservation: the comfort of tradition, the prestige of exclusivity, the safety of prescribed roles. But what we'd gained was far more valuable: authenticity, mutual respect, and relationships based on love rather than obligation. When dinner was over and guests began to help with cleanup, something that would never have happened at Silver Pine with its invisible staff, I found a quiet moment with my father near the window. "This isn't what I imagined for you," he admitted, watching Victor laugh with his firefighter friends. "But I can see now that it's where you belong." "Thank you for being here," I replied. "It matters. Your mother and I have been talking," he continued, somewhat hesitantly. "We'd like to host Christmas this year. Something smaller than our usual gathering. If you and Victor would consider attending." "We'd like that," I said, echoing his earlier words. "As long as it's understood that we come as we are." He nodded, accepting the gentle boundary. "As you are." As our apartment filled with the comfortable chaos of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company, I realized that canceling that resort reservation had never really been about revenge. It had been about refusing to participate in a system that valued appearance over authenticity, tradition over happiness, and control over love. Sometimes burning a bridge isn't an act of destruction, but of creation, clearing the way for something stronger and more genuine to be built in its place. So, what about you? Have you ever had to set a dramatic boundary with family to protect yourself or someone you love? What was the hardest part about standing your ground? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else finding the courage to create healthier relationships. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and building the life you deserve. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is the one that truly feels like home.